Call to order this August 14th, 2025, regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have roll call?
Elizabeth Dauberman.
Here.
Mary Lee Hall.
Here.
Samantha Hall.
Here.
William Hall.
Here.
Jeremy Hesh.
Here.
Jennifer Henkel.
Here.
Nathan Henkel.
Here.
James Holly.
Here.
Joseph Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 2.01, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the June 19th, 2025 minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries, which brings us to item 4, student rep report. Caleb.
All right, not too much because it's been the summer, but first I'd like to say you guys look great in your 70s outfits. Very, very good. The hot pink might take the cake. But, and I hear it's for a good cause. I'm sure you'll talk about it later. But just a couple dates, couple notes. One thing, since I run cross country, we train on campus, and I've been running around looking at all the buildings. I'm seeing all the construction. It all looks great, kind of like last year. So it's great seeing the stuff we talk about in meetings actually going out and happening, because people don't really think that this is tangible. So it's good seeing it. Fall sports also in the same vein. I've been running around seeing all the teams. Fall sports starting up. Marching band had its band camp, and they're working on their competition show. And football heat week was a success. I've heard from a couple of my friends on the team that they've got some good guys coming out. That's good. We got back to school night for all the schools and buildings and everything. And K through 9 starts on August 16th, and then grades 10 through 12, finally me, start on the 20th. And then a special shout out to the new staff and students and incoming freshmen. You guys are coming to the best building. I'm a little bit biased. And you're just joining a good, amazing family, community. So welcome. And I think that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 5.01, educational updates by Dr. Ruppert.
Thank you, President Henkel, School Board. Caleb, no comment on Dr. Bryson or Mrs. Green?
He said they look great.
Okay.
You all look great, but the hot pink.
We hope everyone had a great summer. Though the summer's coming to a very close end, real excited to see all the life back in the building today. There was a lot of excitement this morning, but I'll let Dr. Bryson maybe talk about that later. So real excited to get the staff and students back in here. As Caleb mentioned, students K through 9 starting next Tuesday, and then 10 through 12 will come in on Wednesday. So I will continue with my regular reporting of safe, supportive, and collaborative culture, as I've done in previous years. We welcome back our bus drivers to their annual kickoff. Last week, it was great seeing a lot of their smiling faces, some returning, and some new faces of the bus drivers. And just to put out there, our bus drivers have what I consider the most important job of anybody within our district, getting our students to and from school safely each and every day. So if you see bus drivers out there, please make sure you thank them. I know they're excited right now about getting those little cherubs and the big cherubs on the bus, but thanking them for the work that they're going to do this year. We really appreciate them. Our staff will participate tomorrow in an annual safety training that will also include cybersecurity. So real excited for Mr. Matt Leitzel, our school safety security coordinator, as well as Mr. Greg Hunt, who's our coordinator of technology, that will be assisting in both of those trainings that are required by the state, Act 55, that we have 1 hour of in-person safety training and 2 additional hours throughout the year. Under supportive, throughout the summer, one of our primary goals, we had to close out last school year and get this school year started. But one of the things we really had to do was hire staff for the position. So a big shout out to all those committees, the interview committees at the elementary, middle, high school, even the admin, for taking the time to sit on those committees and hiring the best staff for our position. I also wanted to thank all of our administrative and office staff for all the behind-the-scenes things they have done to get this year started. But going back to something Caleb had mentioned about the athletes being on campus and being around, we got to thank our custodians and our maintenance. They've done a lot of work on the outside of prepping, but the inside of the schools look immaculate. So a big thank you to all those departments. Under collaboration, I want to thank all the staff who participated in the staff development over the summer to really get a jump start on this upcoming school year. Not only are we going to continue to focus on maintaining safe, supportive, and collaborative culture, but also with the effective instruction in every classroom. And a special thank you I want to send out to the administrative team, as well as our instructional specialists, our math coaches, who did a lot of time in working with the staff in their building in preparing for this school year. Couple reminders, Caleb hit them all. With the exception, the school's closed on Monday, September 1st. And then we'll be back here, personnel policy, on Monday, September 15th, followed by a regularly scheduled school board meeting, which will be on Wednesday, September 17th. So let's have a great school year. Or not, the choice is ours.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6.01, public comment. We have one signed up, Captain John Smith.
Thank you. This would be a yearly thing for me. I'm here for the Voice of Democracy of the VFW and also the Patriots Pen program. The 2025-2026 theme is, how are you showing patriotism and support for our country? In case you don't know what the Voice of Democracy and the Patriot Pen program is, Voice of Democracy is a essay and an oral presentation, approximately 3 to 5 minutes on the topic. Is submitted with a written essay and a thumb drive, for the oral presentation of it. I'm trying to do this year because there was a lot of emphasis on one of the district commanders last year. Was a friend of ours, and he's now the district representative for both of them. So what I want to do is make sure that Susquehannock and Southern Middle School gets their entries in. They come to the post, so when they do it, or when they do their entries, they are sent to VFW Post 7012, P.O. Box 417, New Freedom, Pennsylvania 17349. So as long as they get there, really good. Oh, the cutoff date for Voice of Democracy to us is October 31st. And after we judge them, what I would like to see is actually we come to Susquehannock or Southern Middle School and judge them along with somebody from one of the departments, preferably the English department, or history department for that matter. But yeah, we would like to come up and do it with them. If we get them together, I will contact the school, and we can get through there and get them judged with more perspective as far as education is concerned, as opposed to a bunch of veterans saying, I really like Johnny over there, and even though he doesn't know how to spell his name. But so, okay, that pretty much covers that. The other thing I wanted to do, let everyone know, is in case you hadn't heard or hadn't seen, the VFW and New Freedom is actually going to move. It's going to move from 123 West Main Street to 345 North Constitution Avenue. but actually the entrance will be off Weathersfield Drive, like you're going back to the soccer fields. We just broke ground on it. It's going to be a fabulous facility. We're still looking for donations to it to help build for the building fund. Anyone that's interested in doing it, contact the Post. There is a nonprofit cutoff for it in Indianapolis, where you would make your donations actually to Indianapolis. That will come back as a 501c3 to you, and then it would they would take all that money and send it back to VFW Post 7012 that we can use for construction. This has been a long 5 years of real hard grind for me, and this is my last year as the commander there. So I'm just trying to push it and hopefully maybe get it done before June of 2026 when my command expires. So I want to thank everyone here. Susquehanna doing a great job. I don't like coming here as a naysayer. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 6.02, board discussion and public comment. Does anyone have any?
I do. I have a couple of questions. Captain Smith, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned about the essay and the verbal submission. Where do kids go if they're interested in finding out more details as far as how many words, what topics, that you're looking for? Specifics?
It's on that,
Okay.
but they can go to,
Website.
and I'll put it on our website.
Okay.
Or they can send me an email. It's vfwpost7012@comcast.net. Then you put Commander on it or Captain Jack or whatever you want to stick on it.
Okay.
But yeah, you send it there and I will get back to you for two reasons. Number one, my wife's the one that proofreads all the emails, because if it was me, I'd probably hit the little box and then it'd be deleted in that 10 seconds.
So what
Yes,
is the
ma'am.
website, just for anyone listening that might want to look at it when you're done putting it up?
Yeah, excuse me?
The website is.
for your VFW?
What's your website?
Oh, the website is vfwpost7012.org.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, moving on to item 7, the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. And we'll move to item 8, education. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Henkel.
Thank you. 8.01, that's just information talking about how, and this is actually a pretty big deal, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Ruppert in a minute, but that all of our schools in Southern York County School District have now received certification in level 2 of HRS, high reliability schools. So Dr. Ruppert to Dr. Hughes, I believe.
Thank you, Mrs. Hinkle. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hughes, but I will echo what you stated there about all of our 5 schools not only being certified in level 1, safe, supportive, and collaborative culture, but also in level 2, effective instruction in every classroom. So Dr. Hughes, I'll turn it over to you.
Wait, I did have one question. How many schools in Pennsylvania are certified?
5.
And how many schools of ours are certified?
5.
Interesting.
We are very excited because this represents a lot of hard work from our teachers and our administrators in our buildings. The hard work that everyone has put forward. One of the things that we wanted to do this year is a little bit different than what we did last year with reporting on level 1. We want to show you what each one of our leading indicators, there's 6 of them, what our teachers and our administrators, how they went about getting certified. So one of the things with level 2, it's effective teaching in every classroom. And we heard today, and I want to thank Mrs. Hall for the speech this morning with our new teachers and all of our teachers coming back today. We talked about the excellence that is happening in our classrooms, and it can be shown through this certification process. So we'll be bringing you information every month to show you how we went about that and what the buildings are still doing to continue to make sure that we have that in place. And all of the hard work that our teachers have done. A lot of videos and things that were shared were teachers talking about the process that they have with collaboration and working together, which is a very important part of what we're doing in level 2 and level 3. Really working together and collaborating and making sure that this isn't something that people are doing on their own, that we're working together to help every single one of our students. So we're really excited about level 2, and we're looking forward to our journey as we start on level 3.
So much. Alrighty, 8.02, again, this is information, this is the update on the Chromebook distribution process for this school year. Dr. Reppert.
Thank you, Mrs. Henkel. So just for the school board community, as it was approved last school year that we went 2 to 1 in grades K through 4, our schools are ready. Our schools are ready for the distribution and how they're going to be utilized in grades K, 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as the plan that was put in place, because during assessments, we need to make sure that some of the devices may need to be moved to support our grades 3 and grade 4 when they get to the state assessment time. So this does provide us the flexibility. Our administrators have had a plan that they have put together with their staff, and they'll be ready to roll that out as we get started next week with our students. So just a quick update on the Chromebooks.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Reppert?
Just thanks for putting in the work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get that done.
Well, the thanks goes back to the buildings, especially at the elementary, and how they were going to navigate and put together the procedures in place there. So that's where the true thanks would go. But thank you.
I want to just go ahead and reiterate as well. We're just moving from a 1-to-1 to a 2-to-1. We're not taking them away. It's just less emphasis and not having that one-on-one. So that might have been something that could be cleared up as well. But yeah, I think it's a great move for our district. 8.03. This is the additional classroom for early intervention services at Shrewsbury Elementary School. Dr. Reppert, can you explain this one for us?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Hall. So the early intervention program through the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, we currently have a fair share agreement with the Lincoln Intermediate Unit where we're utilizing rooms that are already designated for the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. So we're going to have an early intervention program now, not only for special regular education, but special education students that can be placed. A great opportunity for parents to have their children now enrolled in this program, that we can identify the supports that they may need as they come into kindergarten those following years. The other opportunity that it does provide for our high schoolers, shadowing, internship opportunities, and working in the early intervention. So we could be looking at some, future early interventionists, childcare, even teachers, by having that opportunity of working with these children that are coming into our schools.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to move to approve LIU's request to operate an additional classroom for early intervention services at Shrewsbury Elementary School starting the 2025-2026 school year. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Reppert? Any nays or abstentions? All right, that motion carries. That takes us to 8.04, which is speakers approved through the vetting process. There were 2 speakers. This is just for information. We don't have to vote on this tonight. Well, we're not going to vote on this tonight. But the 2 speakers, it's the Engineering Society of York to present a physical science presentation to all Southern York County School District 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, which sounds like an amazing opportunity at no cost to the district. And then this next one, I'm particularly proud of. Colonel Brian McCarthy is going to conduct a school-wide motivational presentation to Susquehannock High School students on Friday, September 19th at no cost to the district. And many of you might remember he was the keynote speaker 2 years ago for my daughter's graduation and many others here. He was fantastic, and he's going to do a fantastic job. So So there's that. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, great opportunity for our students. 8.05, Stage 1 Curriculum Map as District-Wide Master Maps. I'm going to go ahead and approve the following Stage 1 curriculum maps as the district-wide master maps, and that's leadership in the classroom. May I have a second, please?
Second.
And then, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Reppert? Dr. Reppert, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, it's just another one of the many curriculum maps. Last year, as a board, you approved many as we were transitioning to our new website. So this is the first of a few that the board will receive this year as we're looking at updating additional curriculum maps.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reppert. Does anybody have any discussion points they'd like to go over? Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. 8.06, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve a quote from SmartPass for a one-year license to an electronic hall pass system at a cost of $5,618.23 through June 30th, 2026. May I have a second?
Second.
And Dr. Reppert, can you explain this one to us?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Hankel, I do apologize. So previously, the board had approved a program called eHall Pass that our high school and middle school had utilized. This is where students that if they're going to the restroom or going to the guidance or going to another teacher, a way to track where the students are going. So the eHall Pass had the challenges that our high school was running into is during their intervention period at the end of the day, that they're running into some issues with signing in and out and students signing in and out. So as our current students would say, glitching. And, you know, after some research with it and communication with our high school had with eHall Pass, they had a fix, but it would be an additional $5,000 of an add-on to add what they call FlexPass. So I have to applaud the administrators for really looking into it because that total would have took us to $10,322 with that add-on, whereas the Smart Pass, as Ms. Nankel mentioned, would be about $5,600. So definitely providing the district the savings as we're looking at, you know, being able to track our students and identify where they are, and it is also going to provide a more of a seamless transition into using that going into this upcoming school year.
Thank you, Dr. Reppert. Better service at half the cost sounds like a win-win to me. So, does anybody have any discussion points?
It absolutely does, and I thank Dr. Sterner and Dr. Bell for that amazing board briefing. It was great looking through it to see what this pass system is going to do that also improves what we were using and how it can be used in the future. So, really nice, lots of detail, very helpful. Thank you.
Agreed. Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. 8.07, I don't have any other items of business. Does anybody else? All right, that concludes education report.
All right, we'll move next to 9, Finance and Budget, and I'll turn it over to our treasurer, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, President Hinkle. 9.01, we've got our financial reports, and this is a combination of June and July, since we weren't here last month, took the month off. You've got your treasurer's report, tax collection report, budget status reports, no cafeteria report because cafeteria wasn't open. I do want to do the rundown of the numbers real quick for the general fund. We started June with a balance of $4,738,608.46. And we ended July with a balance of $3,769,801.82. For the investment accounts, in June we started with a balance of $32,883,455.90 and ended July with a balance of $27,199,562.49. You may read the rest of these at your leisure. 9.02. Going to make a motion to approve the bills for payment as presented. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this? Hearing none. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. We pay the bills. 9.03 and 9.04, we have nothing for exonerations or budget transfers. 9.05, we're going to get an update from Mrs. Green about the state budget and all of the fun from Harrisburg. Mrs. Green.
So as you know, we do not have a state budget. So over the last 20 years, there's been more than half of the years that we have not had a state budget when we started the fiscal year. So this is not unusual. So when we look at the impact on our district, there's two different situations. One would be when it's only a month or two. So we'll talk about that first, then we'll talk about if it goes longer. So because we only get 34% of our funding from the state, from us, there's really not a cash flow issue right now because we just started the fiscal year. But we do have loss of revenue for interest earning, especially now that there are actually interest rates. So we get about 4% or more on our money. So we should receive approximately $3 million of state funding in August, which at this point does not look like that's going to come, and another $1.5 million in September. So each month that we don't have a budget, we are probably losing interest earnings between $10,000 and $15,000 that we would have earned. Of course, that money would go to offset any costs in the future. So each dollar is very important. So for us, that's the big piece right now from a financial standpoint. Even without the budget, we will receive about $900,000 in Act 1 money, so that's being considered separately. So we believe at this time we will get that, our first installment of the Homestead Farmstead money. So if there's an extended budget impasse, like in 2015-16, in my recollection, that was the worst year. That was not, we did not get money until March. We will be in a different situation at that point, so hopefully we don't get into that. Secondary impact of not having a budget is understanding the funding we're going to receive for 25-26 so that we can look at 26-27. So, for instance, recently there's been talk in Harrisburg of level funding the budget. For us, if basic education and special education funding stays at the 24-25 levels, we will have a budget shortfall of $240,000 because we budgeted for additional funding in basic ed and special ed. Additionally, last year, for the first time in many, many, many years, we received charter school funding of about $136,000. We don't know where that stands, and that's been kind of silent. The other piece that we're unsure where it'll be is we received, as you remember, we did a lot of budget presentations in the fall last year to understand the budget. We received about $520,000 in adequacy funding. That was supposed to be the first year of 7 years to close the economic gap in school districts. So those are the three areas that I'm most concerned about. They add up to about $900,000. So depending on where those fall is going to depend where we are. So all the time I'm asked, what's next year's budget look like? And my response is always, I don't know, because I don't even know what the funding is. So for us, the importance of getting the state budget passed is understanding what kind of funding we have for this year so we can start to work on what's happening for next year. It's very difficult for us to determine where we're going to be when we don't have 34% of our revenue streams. So that's really the big impact for us. So we're very hopeful that it gets passed soon. From the federal standpoint, I know you've heard a lot about there was the stall on the federal funding. So that was Title II, Title III, and Title IV. For us, that was about $100,000. Every dollar counts, but it wasn't a huge impact. Probably the big impact there was they opened the applications for the federal funding. We filled everything out. We were ready to submit by the beginning of July, which is the time frame, and then they closed them and they wiped everything out and it's all gone. And so now this week they opened them back up again and we get to start from scratch because everything's gone. So now they're due in a couple weeks. So that's really the impact. And I think it's going to be similar from the state budget, but it is difficult to understand, especially when we get into things like the safety grant funding and all those things. We don't know where any of that lies right now. So that's probably the biggest impact for us. But as time goes on, the impact will be more and more if we don't have a budget. So any other questions? I know there were a couple questions from the board on that. Any other questions on where we are with state budget?
I think you answered them all.
Okay, great. Thank
We
you.
hope for the best.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Green. And Trevor, I'm sure he's definitely involved. 9.06, this is an information item about the engagement letter from Smith, Elliott, Kearns and Company. These are our auditors. That's there for your review. You don't have to take any action on that. 9.07, this is for a quote for desktop inventory tracking and management software. I'm going to make a motion to approve a quote from Divot Assets, Inc. for a one-year license to its desktop inventory tracking and management software for the district's fixed assets at a cost of $1,750. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on this? Any discussion? I think they really missed it with the name of the company. It should be Golf Asset Management. Okay. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. 9.08, this is for the MSISAC Cybersecurity Services. Going to make a motion to approve a subscription to the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center for cybersecurity services at an amount of $1,995 for a term of 18 months. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on this? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. 9.09, other items of business. I have none. Does anybody else have any? No? And back to you, Mr. President.
All right. Turn it over to our Personnel and Policy Chair, Mrs. Samantha Hall, for Personnel and Policy.
Thank you, President Henkel. Item 10.01 is policy number 815.1, the use of generative artificial intelligence in education. This is for our second reading and approval. And before I get into saying the motion, I just wanted to give a recap of this because it started last year and I think it's helpful to remember. So this policy was requested by the AI committee and it was drafted with revisions based initially on the PSBA policy template. We presented it as a first read at the May board meeting. Following discussion at that meeting, the policy was sent to our solicitor for review. Due to recommended additions to the policy language, it then shifted back to a first read in June. At that meeting, after additional conversation, the solicitor was asked to provide counsel on adopting age restrictions as part of the policy, and tonight would constitute the second reading with a vote. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve. Sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. There we are. Anyway, I'd like to make a motion to approve policy number 815.1, the use of generative artificial intelligence in education. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have some discussion. I did not see an update with age groups, appropriate age groups in the new policy. Is that something that I'm missing? Has anyone else seen that? Because I did not see it.
The addition that was added based on the discussion from the June, which we just added in there, would be specifically the district will adhere to specific and user age restrictions for approved generative AI tools. I'm looking in the
In the prohibited use of generative AI, so I see a lot of information there, but I don't see what you're referring.
Under authority,
Yeah, under authority, the second
authority.
paragraph, it's a
so
one-liner.
specifically, the district will adhere to specific end-user age restrictions, end-user, age restrictions for approved generative AI tools.
That's still a typo
Okay,
in it.
so that's not the age-specific, like hearing from staff, teachers, elementary schools, how they're going to be using it. Anything that we can add to this to just be a little bit more specific there? Is this something, what I'm getting at is students in the elementary school, are they going to be using this? Or is it just a tool for staff to use to help with lesson planning?
That's under delegation of responsibilities.
What's
If I
that?
may, on the second page under delegation of responsibilities, I think that fourth paragraph talks about the age appropriateness. So generative AI tools used in the district shall be evaluated and authorized on a go for age appropriateness. And then immediately above it does have the informed consent of a parent and guardian for their child could use an AI tool too. So there's those under delegation of responsibility.
I will just say, as a parent, I find this policy very hard to read and understand and to know what that would mean for my children. So I'm still struggling with this one.
So I think one of the difficulties is that at the moment, these tools are being introduced into software that we're already using. So we've approved the software, but now there's a generative AI component in software that students were already using. And so we need to have a sense of the landscape of what's even there. So I mean, I think one of the important things that's here is that there's going to be what's the term? An inventory of AI tools that are in use. We don't have that yet, and so it's very hard to say what we're going to allow to be used. I think that we know that the use of generative AI in elementary school is pretty limited at the moment. But yeah, Dr. Bryson can speak to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak from a general term and then an implementation, to give you kind of a broader view. So right now, if you were to look at the use of AI, specifically generative AI, it's extremely limited. However, at the elementary level, and you see that begin to increase at the middle school level and again at the high school level. When I'm speaking to AI, I'm not speaking ChatGPT. That's not what I'm referencing. I'm referencing, for an example, software that we pay a licensing for, like Canva, or a student management or subject management system, where it has the ability to create a PowerPoint. Well, there's an AI component to that which will help you search for images within Canva to utilize in your PowerPoint. Or I might put my bullet points for the PowerPoint in that and utilize Canva's AI tool to create the structure of the PowerPoint. And it'll create it based upon the topic of that PowerPoint. So we're approving Canva, they update it with an AI component, and we're saying, okay, there's not a data risk, there's a student data risk, there's not a risk from being out in the internet and searching all kinds of things that you wouldn't utilize in an elementary PowerPoint presentation. So by definition, it's AI, but it's appropriate use. So we're concerned about, honestly, from a management perspective, just saying there'll be no use of AI at the elementary, because I'm not sure we can manage that any longer. It's being infused in almost all of the software that's out there. Even existing apps that have been approved, we're finding ourselves going back and saying, okay, should it still be approved? Is it still appropriate? And so Nathan spoke a little bit to an inventory. So our goal now is going back to the drawing board and saying, what is it that is being requested to be utilized, or that we already know is now a part of, as an example, be Canva, and a very short list of others that are actually utilized. Another example, maybe for our community, we're no longer using iReady software to generate problem sets for kids at the elementary school. It's expensive, super expensive. But you can utilize, let's say, Khan Academy for a generator of problems, and it's got an AI component now. And the basis of that is, as a student, let's say a fifth grader, I may do 3 problems, I get 2 of them wrong, that AI is able to at least begin to hone down what is the skill that I have wrong, that I need more problems on to get better at, and it'll generate those those additional math problems for you. It's almost identical to the functionality of a system that we used to pay a whole lot of money for. It's not got student information, but what it's doing is using the responses to generate new problems that are specific to that student. And I also want to say, is that the teacher now? Are we just putting that? No. This is a subset of what's happening in the classroom, where that student might work on that for 10, 15 minutes because they need help. They might need additional problem sets in that area. So we have a handful of AI that's utilized at the elementary school, but we're not utilizing ChatGPT. We're not utilizing those tools. And to speak to Jeff's topic of age restrictions, that type of tool is 18 and above. So we're not going to be utilizing that at the high school moving forward either. But though each tool has a guideline for age restriction. So that statement in the policy says when we review the request for a tool that's going to be utilized, they're going to have to list the name of the tool, the grade level used, the purpose and example of how they're using it, and determine then, is it age appropriate regarding restrictions for that tool. Will then go to the principal, it will then go to the tech department and Dr. Hughes to all approve it for that reasoning. Tech department looks at it for whether it's collecting data, which we then, if it's personal data, we're not going to be utilizing it. The age restriction on it, whether it's appropriate for the age, and the purpose and educational value for the curriculum. So that we're almost going tool by tool. We are going tool by tool. And it's really the only way to not ban everything, but only utilize the tools that are appropriate for age level and use. To start that process, we're going to have to do an inventory and go through that process with tools that are already being utilized. And then we have a starting basis of here's the list that's being utilized. And we will publish that list so that anybody could go on there and see, oh, here's the tools that are listed, here's a couple examples that are listed on how it's being utilized, and we're going to have to be far more vigilant in staying on top of that list. Because unfortunately, next week, 5 of those apps could change in how it's utilized.
Sure. And do we have the capacity to put that on a director of technology, so to speak, as far as going through all of those things in a timely manner so that they can be used?
The heavy lift's going to be up front for auditing what we have, and it's not like tomorrow, this has to be in place. So, like as we're speaking now, right now, there's nothing in place. So, yeah, they're going to need a couple months to do an inventory, potentially go through those. And I've already ventured to say, I just had a conversation with Dr. Repper today and Dr. Hughes. I indicated, look, if we have 150 apps that are on the list, which is roughly what that list looks like now, how many of them are actually utilized right now?
Sure.
Versus those that were put on that list 2 years ago, and they've evolved and they're utilizing something else now, right? So I want to start with the inventory because I don't want our people going through all these arbitrary tools that may or may not be even utilized right now. So let's start with what are we utilizing? Let's determine whether they meet the criteria that we have in the policy. If so, good, you can continue on. And what are the new ones that we don't see on the list? And those would be the next set that we'd have to go through and determine what is the priority on these and do they meet the criteria.
And I think the answer is you can continue on for now.
Right.
Because like I said before, I think this policy is one that we're going to have to be reviewing every policy cycle for a while now to see if it needs updates. I remember a few concerns expressed by various board members that I think this policy addresses better than what we have now, which is no policy. It addresses, now, I'm not saying none of this language could be improved, but it does now address that will adhere to the end user. I would like to
Yeah.
talk about the grammar of that, but I think you're saying you
Yeah,
also have.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so I know you wanted to talk about that one, so we'll come back to that one. Another one was the idea that the AI would replace, that the AI might replace something students should be doing that actually becomes part of the learning process. So for example, developing an outline, I haven't heard this from an English teacher, but I've heard it from someone who was saying, okay, this might be a good use for AI, developing an outline for an essay. Well, that's actually part of the learning that goes into writing an essay. So if we get this what I think addresses that is the inventory. If we get the inventory that talks about the purposes and examples, it may not catch everything, but we may see, oh, we're using it to generate an outline or to give a list of essay topics. No, that's something the student should do on their own. And that's something we can have discussions then with Dr. Hughes or with the teachers involved to say, okay, you know, what's actually happening here? Are we replacing something that the student should actually be doing and having the AI do it? I think the inventory helps with that. I think the inventory helps with a lot of concerns, but it is backward looking. It doesn't necessarily fix the concerns now, but it allows us to identify them.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson.
One of the things I was thinking about adding in here, the evaluation monitoring piece. I know in there it says that we would be given the approved list once annually. I think we should adjust that, at least because this is such a fast evolving marketplace. Change that to at the end of each marking period.
As I think about that, and I think it's more ease of access, we're going to publish it. So it's going to be available on the website and updated as quickly as we can go through there, right?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay.
As
So
collected.
it's sort of going to be live.
So it's going to be a live,
Yeah, I think there's going to be a delay to it, and it's not going to be real accurate here in the first couple months for what I just, but ultimately, you know, a couple months from now, you should be able to look at that, and 2 weeks from now, see a new one that popped up as a rule.
It brings up I'm sorry, was I interrupting you?
go ahead.
From the implementation standpoint, like I understand what you're talking about with an inventory log. That's not necessarily something that the board is approving. That's the behind the scenes as you're collecting what you're actually using AI for. But I just want to put out there for a second, since we say that we are already going to revisit the AI policy, I'm sure several times. We need to understand, and I guess the general public also needs to understand that because the inventory log is coming to us new like it is to everybody else, and we get to see what we're actually doing and what we're not doing. What happens if the board sees it being used in a way, an app that we don't like? It would be perceived as taking away something that we've already given permission for, even though we didn't ever give permission broadly with the log of inventory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think your policy right now, as it would be written now, is you're giving us guidelines that you want age restrictions, you want it to be a part of the curriculum, you want it to go through a vetting process, if you will, to meet those criteria. That's not to say that you find that, well, we don't want this particular, like, you're right, so, you're right. There is a reality to that. Just as if we potentially approved a textbook and later find that, okay, this part of it isn't what we thought.
Yeah, I think it's not explicitly stated because it's, in a way, this isn't quite the right way to say it, but I think every AI tool right now is a bit on a probationary status because it hasn't been reviewed by administration, by any of that team that's going to review the
It's going
tools.
to evolve, so maybe we're all in agreement that we like it right now, but 6 months from now, it does something that we don't like. And so
Right.
I want some kind of language flexibility there to, like you said, that everything is kind of on a contingent, temporary basis.
It says the Board of Education will receive the approved list of generative AI tools or resources on an annual basis. Yeah, so,
I mean,
Yeah.
if we're going to have it live on the website,
then we
that's
receive it.
fine, but that should be stated here. Yeah, we should match it.
It does talk about the website. It does not give the frequency, I think partly because at the moment.
We don't
But
know yet,
Yeah.
but
It says the district shall inform staff, students, parents, and guardians and other users about this policy and the list of approved generative AI tools or resources by posting on the district website and by other efficient methods. And since we don't right now have a frequency that, like, I think, I would expect to see it updated kind of like maybe in a couple of months and then monthly-ish after, like to see updates just flowing in over the course of the year, and wouldn't be surprised to see a few showing up every month, maybe at various times in the month. Is that a reasonable expectation?
Basically, they would be initiated from a classroom teacher or principal, and that could happen,
Yeah, as we review the tools that are in use,
Right.
just it's sort of as staff have capacity to review those tools. And then, I guess it would be good, and again, I don't know that this has to be in policy, but it'd be good to know something about, how far along in the process are we? So if we can be provided updates of, obviously, you're guessing because you don't know what's out there, but we've had 80% of the teachers at Southern Middle have reported in on what AI tools they believe they're using. So getting information like that as we go. Again, I don't know that has to be in policy, but that would be useful to kind of know. Are we, we see 15 tools here. Are we 20% done or are we 80% done?
Yeah, the process would be probably 100%, because it's going to be, this group of teachers is going to get together and share what tools are you utilizing this school year.
Okay.
And here's the existing list, cut out anything you're not utilizing.
Okay.
So it's a reasonable goal that we can aim towards.
I think it's a reasonable goal that, 2 to 3 months from now, we have a pretty stable list to start. And they also will have an awareness of the process for approval of anything moving forward.
That's really good because that gets the list to us before the next policy cycle. So then we can review, if we see issues,
Right, then you can
we can
recalibrate.
adjust.
It also, I'm really pleased with the district. I mean, it is the onus of the district this directly coincides with our transparency for curriculum. This is an aspect of curriculum. And so what would be the point in having all the transparency that we have for curriculum, actual tactile books, but not when it comes to the other things? And so I'm very pleased with the district taking that responsibility on themselves and being able to meet that goal. That's pretty fantastic, actually.
So under delegation of responsibility, I do like that the third paragraph down, the district shall obtain prior informed consent from parents, guardians before allowing a student to use generative AI tools and resources in school. However, I do wonder what that looks like for families and parents. Like, as a parent myself, I go on to Sapphire and I fill in all the information before the beginning of the year. Is it just a blanket approval, or is this something on the teachers that they have to get this from parents every time they're going to be using something? Is that something that can be easily applied? What does that look like?
So, yeah, you would, similar to what we're doing with COPA, which is an annual approval, 13 or under or 13? 13 and under. This is going to add to that. Where now it may be, okay, that was fine, but now you'd have 13 to 16 or whatever, depending on the tool. And that permission is going to have to go out potentially annually, but potentially if a teacher's interested in utilizing a tool a month from now or 2 weeks from now, it potentially would have to go out to that class through that teacher, that permission. It's cumbersome.
Right.
It is definitely cumbersome.
But it's the same thing we do for field trips. We get permission for field trips. I think this is something that's potentially more impactful to children than,
Right. So maybe healthier to pre-plan throughout the year rather than have this come up regularly for teachers to wait for parents to approve each request. Just thinking through it logistically.
Any other discussion of the major features of this policy?
I just want to say generally again, a policy is in place to be able to help people understand what they can and they can't do. This is an albatross of reading. I don't know how a teacher would know what they should do. I don't know how a parent would know what could be expected. We say that it's not about generative AI because it could be something that's built into Canva, but yet the whole policy reads that it's generative AI. I just think it's not well-written. I don't think it's understandable. I don't know what we're saying, oh, well, we don't want to be liable, but how? Like, what are we, I don't even know what, I just don't think it's well-written. I don't think it's understandable. I would look at this and I wouldn't know what to do with it. So.
I do think there's a lot of complexity, and I think there's some vagueness because of the unknowns. But I think it's hard to get around that. And what I don't want is to continue forward with no guidelines.
But are they guidelines if you don't even understand them?
well, I think the critical guideline, I think that it started here with the, well, end user age restrictions. I think that is the key piece, because frankly, that is, that pretty much puts some really hard boundaries on who can use this in the school. I don't think this policy is perfect, but I think it's a lot better than not having any age restriction on Perplexity or any other of the AI tools that we know students are being asked to use
So like,
today.
I don't want to interrupt on this, but like, this is just my question. I mean, as a board, we govern, right? Like, we set what happens. I feel like we are being pushed into this because technology is pushing us into doing this. And I just reject that premise. I feel like that's abdicating what it is that our responsibility is.
Well, I think sometimes external forces do push you into making a decision, and especially because this is being incorporated into tools that are already in use. It would be pretty disruptive to remove those tools just because generative AI has been introduced into them. So what we can do is we can get an inventory of those tools and see how they're being used and manage the use of generative AI that those tools present. So you may be able to still use the tool, but once we see, okay, this tool has this capability, now we know this tool's in use. That's the first thing. We need to know this tool's in use. Okay, maybe one of us does a little bit of research and finds this tool has this capability, and I don't think that's a good one for students to be using. Well, then we can come back and say, okay, are we using it in this way? Hopefully the answer is no. And then if we feel the need, if we feel like it's a strong enough issue, we can actually say in policy that this use case is not approved. But I think until we have an inventory, which this policy directs the administration to create an inventory, I think it's difficult to, we have some guidelines here. I do think there are guidelines here. I think they are necessarily vague at this time because the subject matter is very fluid at this time.
Yeah, I want to push back a little bit with the perceived ambiguity and the vagueness of it. I do understand that this is an overarching philosophy, and the guidelines are a little bit ambiguous. But this does go along with other policies that we have that almost read exactly like this, but aren't technical because they're not technology-based. When you look at the vetting process for guest speakers, when you look at the vetting process for supplemental materials, when you look at curriculum broadly, how did we write those policies? What is our orientation towards those policies? What do we say? They're largely philosophical. They say that they have to meet these ends, that they can't sometimes do this thing, that we don't want it to do that thing, all very vague. And then we go into what the principles of our education is going to be, the requirements that they have to, for the vetting process. We have to talk about, different curriculum portions that we have that it speaks to. But could it also do these things? Well, maybe. We don't say. It's very vague. And then at the end of the day, with the guidelines that are written in the policy, we then trust our curriculum director to be the one that picks the textbooks. What is our orientation towards textbooks? What are our guidelines toward textbooks? Largely have them submitted to us. We have a little bit of overhead with the board where I look at them. But, we don't really have a huge, besides philosophy, what is our orientation towards curriculum? It's the same kind of policy. It's very open-ended.
I just see it as different. I don't know if it's because AI is new and emerging and we don't have that baseline of knowledge with it, but when I read the instructional materials, I understand that. When I look at this, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I'm not, the most stellar, astute person at these things, but I'm probably the average parent who is out there who would be looking at this to understand what does this mean for my child. And it just doesn't pass that test for me, so.
So only certain parts of this, I think, are really directed at parents as the audience. An awful lot of it, I think, is directed at the administration and staff.
That's problematic too, don't you think?
No, because they're the ones that are primarily governed by the policy. Parents are not governed, parents who send their children here are governed by our policies to the extent that they send their children here, and so while their children are here, they have to follow our policies in cooperation with us, but they could withdraw their children. They have more ability to, much less of their life is governed by the policies. The policies we pass primarily govern administrators and staff.
Right, but they're understandable by parents. It's transparency as to what goes on within the school.
I think some policies are understandable by parents and others are hard to understand by parents because some of them get into very technical legal issues.
I think it would be helpful if there was some kind of legal direction from the state or federally. Right now, there just isn't any. So I can.
It does bring up an
understand.
interesting question, though. Ms. Hall was saying about parents and that it could potentially be a problem. Could we maybe put a portion in this, and we can even, because we do have a policy in our supplemental stuff, there is, let's say, as a parent, I'm okay with most of the software that are, and I understand it, but then something pops up, just like you said, it's going to come up live in the next 2 weeks that I don't like. Is there a place in this policy where a parent can challenge what I would call supplemental material, just like we have in our vetting process policy? Can we have that say that they can challenge one of these tools? Because we don't have that right now, and it is just like curriculum.
If I'm reading the policy correctly, you guys elected to keep the language. It says the district shall obtain prior informed consent from a parent or guardian before allowing students to use generative AI tools and resources in school.
But is that every tool?
Well, it does say tools, and I guess that goes to how that permission slip might be prepared. And again, that gets to the point where you're trying to put something together. Because I could see maybe at the elementary level where it's a very finite thing, and a teacher might say, hey, there's really only 1 or 2 tools, and I can tell you what they are. But that may be something we want to encourage at the building level to try to be specific as possible. And I can see at the secondary level, particularly maybe some teacher wants to do something more with AI, it could be a lot more tools. And, but
So with that language that you just read there, would that then be circle back to this inventory?
I think in part, the background why I think PSBA put this in is we do have this federal law, COPA, Child Online Privacy Protection Act, that says, hey, if you're 13 or under, you need prior parental informed consent before you can get personal information. So I think that gloms onto that. So there is a privacy protection piece. But the other piece is when you look at some of the bigger generative AI platforms like Microsoft and Google and things, they allow for the creation of accounts, just like you have in other social media accounts. So Joe Wilson or Jeff Litz could get an account, or little Joe or little Jeff could get an account potentially. And they say, no, you got to be 18 unless you have parental permission or parental supervision. So again, depending how we use it. So if you're talking about using tools in the sense of, I'm going to allow a student to create an account, but by law and by the terms of service, you need to have prior parental permission to do that.
Could we check that? Because I was reading before I came in about Google and Gemini, because that was a specific question for me, because we have it as part of our board emails, right? And so I see the little Gemini thing up there, and I don't have any other, like ChatGPT, I don't pay for any of that. So I went in there and I could see that. So then it made me look to see like who is able to see Gemini, right? Because presumably if it's in my interface, then wouldn't it be in our kids' interface? And so what I was reading is that if Google Gemini is part of the core service as part of our Google Work Education Suite, that they actually don't have age restrictions on it. So I'm just saying, like, if we had a list of everything that we had, then it makes it more tangible what we're looking at. But right now we're like, well, I don't know. So
We looked at the terms of service for some of the bigger accounts, and I have the language if you want it. But generally, that's, when they're talking about user in these terms of service, it's the creation of account. But you're correct. You go to Microsoft, if that's your chosen platform to search the internet, you know, they got a Copilot feature just pops up now, you know, and
but you have to pay for that.
no.
No,
You do a
For
Bing-
generative
a Bing-
AI?
Yeah, Bing search has a generative
Yeah.
summary.
yeah, I mean,
Okay, see, this is like, again, where I'm so frustrated, because we're using AI, and I'm not talking about it coming up as a summary. To me, maybe that is generative AI, but that is not the same as going in and trying to be able to use Gemini to be able to write an outline, write a paper, be able to ask them for mental health help, any of those things. And I'm just saying that when I am on my computer, I can see Gemini is on there, and it said that it does not have any age restrictions if it's part of the core service. So I appreciate everything that you're saying. I'm just saying, speak plainly for me. Are you telling me that when my third grader gets on their Chromebook and they are not going to see that Gemini up there, and they're not going to be able to go in there and be able to use chat, like a ChatGPT type function? Is that
I
what I'm
can
hearing?
tell you that I reviewed my son's, who's going into ninth grade, his Chromebook 2 days ago. And the Google interface that they go through does not have Gemini enabled in it. So I don't know if that is a district level setting. We may have to ask Greg about that.
Okay. Because we were also told that
but-
couldn't be disabled. So like, again, is it automatically
Well-
there or it's not there?
Maybe it can't be disabled for staff, maybe it's automatic.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, we're viewing it as a staff member at some permission level. So for staff, they would normally all have access to, you know,
Can we ask Greg that? Can we ask?
So my understanding is, similar to what Joe just said, staff can have different settings than what students have. Thus, a student does not have access to
No.
Gemini.
the interesting thing is, while it
But
was
a
also
staff member or adult would, sorry.
complete sidetrack, our students are apparently able to add their own extensions to their Chromebooks.
Dr. Hughes, you want to speak to?
I actually had a long conversation with Greg about a lot of this. We've been already behind the scenes all summer. We've been looking at what apps we have, all of those pieces. An extension, which would be what would be added to the computers, or an app goes through a whole process where it is not allowed to go onto a student computer. So they're very limited. Right now, we have 159 different apps that we are evaluating. We found that like 18 of them do the same thing, so why do we need 18 of them? So that goes back to what Dr. Bryson was saying. We want to really narrow down and make sure that what we're having is the best thing out there. But one of the things that is able to be locked out, and I actually went to Greg today and said, we can push out this goes to students, this goes to this set of students, this goes to a teacher is able to put these things on there. We have very specific things. We've been doing a lot of work with different IUs around us that we have generated lists that have over 30 different questions to look and say. So when Dr. Bryson said for elementary, there are very few that we would allow to go into onto our students' Chromebooks because there are only so many that are allowed for that age group. When I looked at, I can tell you right now, we have about 5 at the elementary, 3 of which would be, it has like a sub part that's an AI component. So it's not completely an AI generated information. It's saying, if you want this, there's another button you can press. So we would talk to our teachers to say, this is Canva, what Dr. Bryson was talking about. We'd say, we're not using that feature with our elementary. So that's where we're doing a lot of pieces. And as we're going through, Dr. Reppert and I have been working this summer on making sure that we have a system in place with multiple levels to be able to go through and ensure. We've all looked at it from a curricular standpoint, from a safety standpoint, but we also don't want to limit the ability for our students to be able to learn on some of these pieces. And I can use our Dash and Dot robots. So we have Dash and Dot robots that are for coding for elementary. They're designed for elementary. They're now getting an AI component in the app that allows the student to say, go forward, go back. For an elementary kindergarten student, they can say forward or back. They're not going to be able to type that in. So in some ways, they have where we've done colors, where you code with color. So that's where we're looking at saying, is it appropriate for the age that we're looking for? So that's where we're kind of, we've been looking at all of these components to make sure that we are still allowing our teachers to have the components that they need to instruct, but also making sure that we have very specific guidelines to say, and I'll tell you, there are very few elementary ones out there that are approved. And it'll say right on there, this is not approved if you're under the age of 13 or under the age of 18. So we are taking all of those components and we're already saying, to our teachers and talking with them and saying, we have to look at all of these components. Please do not just go out and take the newest AI out there and just start using it. We want to look for all of these features.
Thank you.
At the risk of saying something philosophical and not really beneficial to this policy, I had an interesting conversation recently with somebody in the health area who shared with me, it was interesting, he was at a conference in the health field, surgical field, and said, one of the main topics out there, regardless of what field you're in, is AI and the use of AI and the fear that AI is going to take over my job. And the statement he shared was, your job's not going to be taken over by AI. Your job's going to be taken over by somebody who can utilize AI to do your job. And I think that's a powerful statement. If we're going to preach that we're preparing our kids for the future and the careers of tomorrow, and I'm not claiming we're saying we're banning AI. We're not banning AI. We have to be very cognizant that they're going to have to utilize it appropriately, and they will have a job in the future. So as we move forward with updating this, I just need to keep in the back of my mind, it's not something we can run from. We have to somehow have guidelines, guardrails in place. But our kids really do need access at some point to be able to learn how to do the jobs of the future.
So I just want to say, I love that. I don't want to run from it. I just want to understand it.
So one of the other things, we're doing a board workshop in October. We're going to, instead of discussing it, we're going to engage you in how is it being utilized in the classroom. Here are some examples, and you'll be working with it so that hopefully we're able to develop your understanding of it as well.
I think this policy does create some guardrails, some important ones that have been added. I think it's a substantial improvement over what was originally given to us, and many other districts passed without even, contending with it. I think that inventory is essential, and this policy directs the creation of it, while also creating some of those guardrails. And at the moment, we have no guardrails. And so even if there are pieces of this policy that could be clearer, I think that what's extremely unclear is the current environment where we have no guidelines or guardrails at all. So for me, this is an improvement over that. But I'll acknowledge there are parts of it that I want to see the inventory and then revisit.
As we've done with policies in the past, let's have something as opposed to nothing. And then we can modify, change, update as we see fit based on the current, climate of what AI, because it's going faster than we can, and it's going to just accelerate. We can adjust our policy to that. And I want something in place as opposed to, you're right, it's being pushed upon us and I don't like it, but what's the alternative? Alternative is we have nothing, and I heard from a student say, our teacher tells us to use ChatGPT to just do it. That's unacceptable, So I'd rather have this than a free-for-all, as it were.
And Dr. Hughes highlighted, from a writing standpoint of a policy, how would I even begin to have what she described? How do you have a policy for that? It has to be open-ended, because I never would have anticipated that's what we would use it for, and have it be, subject to, does it fit our curriculum needs? Is it age appropriate? Is it that's the only way I can think to do it right now. Maybe we'll come up with something different later on, but.
Well, and I think our prior discussions centered around having the AI committee meet a little more regularly than the couple times we've met, and just have that be an ongoing standing committee of the school. That way we've got teachers, we've got leadership, we've got the board all involved in that conversation. I would support this policy with two changes. One is I'd like to define the age restrictions a little more clearly based on kind of the industry standards. I think that you had found, Mr. Litz. I would like.
Language? You'd add language?
I would, first, specifically the district will adhere to specific, and this is a change, it says and, it should say end user age restrictions.
And while we're at it, comma should be an and, because it should be end user and age restrictions, I believe. Otherwise, the comma shouldn't be there, I don't know.
Right, and then what's the second?
But the second part is, and this is kind of where I'm going to lean on you, Mr. Litz, something along the lines of, that we would adhere to the prevalent industry standards of 13 to 18 with parental permission and 18 and older open permission.
So you want to tighten that part of it?
Well, we say age restrictions, but the general public doesn't know what that is. I think, we have a definition section up here, or in here. Should it go in as a definition here to define what those age restrictions are industry-wide, or?
That's interesting.
Well, let me just say this, if I wrote down this correctly, we have a motion and a second at this point for the policy. According to policy 003, changes in a proposed board procedure or policy, except for minor editorial revisions at the second reading, shall cause the reading to constitute a first reading. So if we're talking about substantive additions beyond minor editorial revisions, that's going to kick this back to first reading.
What Mr. Wilson said,
But-
is that minor?
Is a definition of an ambiguous term minor or major editorial revision?
in my mind, a minor editorial revision would be to correct a typographical error, a grammatical error, or to correct a conjunction or an article. Adding a definition that doesn't exist, I think, is something more than minor and editorial. I'll say it that way.
Mr. Wilson, would you be, I'm trying to figure out a way to make it work, would you be okay with making those changes at a later date?
As in pass it so the guardrails are up and then
Yeah,
proceed with changing the definition of age restriction.
Because in full disclosure, the changes you want to make, I can say I'm absolutely on board with those. So if we reviewed it at a later date,
when does our next, because I know we have our policies to be reviewed.
Yeah, it could,
When does our next policy cycle start, Mrs. Hall?
Well, I don't know if we could get it on this one.
I think we could, right? Because we're receiving the list of policies tonight, but that's
Well,
just
first-
information. We could receive the policy in the interim and do first read at September, right?
Yes, so
Well,
one thought would be
yeah.
if you would want to add it on for the next session, the personnel and policy meeting is that Monday night, you could add it on at that point, and then we could add it on for first read.
And technically,
No, I
we're
mean-
receiving it tonight. If we pass it tonight, we're receiving the version that we passed tonight, and then, because we
Yeah.
just passed it, and then
I mean,
we could put it on for first read in September.
I think that I would acquiesce to that. I think that would be a good way to handle it, because I think philosophically, I think this policy needs to be in place before our kids are back in the buildings. That is my core sort of gut feeling. Whether we take it down to the bolts in September when we're on a first read.
So I understand what you're saying about wanting to have it in place as the, school year starts. However, its implementation is a process. It's a multi-month process that is going to sort of shake out probably sometime between now and, the end of this current calendar year, as this list is developed and turns into something tangible, that people are able to see the list and understand the list. So, Dr. Bryson, if this change is made and goes to a first reading, does that preclude you from being able to begin this process of creating this list and then, that vetting process of, moving through the IT department and Dr. Hughes and so on?
So I think that puts him in a little bit of a strange position, because he'd be effectively trying to implement a policy that hasn't passed. Let me turn that around. Hearing what you're hearing from the board tonight, and we can just get a general sense, because there's nothing in the policy that says you can't do what Mr. Wilson is proposing. So understanding, is the board generally favorable to Mr. Wilson's suggestion?
absolutely.
Anyone not favorable? Okay, so you'd be doing yourself a disservice to not incorporate that in the implementation of your policy, given that it's likely to be amended in that way in the near future. So the policy certainly, it permits you to implement the policy in that way. And it seems that likely that an amendment of that sort is coming.
The words will
Could
come
you
later.
repeat what you're requesting, Mr. Wilson? 'Cause
Basically, I think the definition of, we say in here, and I'm trying to find, under authorities, second paragraph, specifically, the district will adhere to specific end user, that still's a typo, end user age restrictions for approved generative AI tools. I believe that we need to define what those age restrictions are based on current prevalent industry guidelines. Specifically, you must be 18 to use ChatGPT is in that class of tool. Then 13 to 18 is with parent or guardian permission, prior consent.
Because what you're indicating is what we're doing. So it's not something I'm changing. I think the purpose of it being added specifically into the policy is for the outside individual that doesn't know what those
Yes.
standards
Yes.
are, right?
I
So
did not mean to imply that you weren't doing that.
Right.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is, and then, and I don't know the answer to this, are there industry standards that says this is how AI tools are categorized, and here are the specific age requirements for those categories?
We could run
Because-
this ChatGPT and find out.
Right, no.
Oh, I
But what I'm saying is.
Double check that.
We're going tool by tool to approve these, because I'm not certain there is that, what you're requesting. And so I'm operating off of, here's the tool, here are our 4 questions, one of which is the age restrictions based on the end user agreement, and that's how we're going to approve it or deny it, and also require permissions based upon it. But I don't know that there's a nice categorized list that you can put into the policy for
Well,
a parent.
right, but, I mean, philosophically, like, if you look at the, Jeff, you saw all of you went through the age things for the variety of tools.
Yes. I had an associate do it who then
Okay,
gave
well,
me-
yeah.
But yeah, we looked at OpenAI, Meta AI, Google Gemini, Deep AI, Microsoft Copilot, Claude AI. So those are the bigger ones. But I think I hear Dr. Bryson saying, and Dr. Hughes' comments, there may be some curricular pieces, for lack of a better term, that we typically use in the educational setting that may not fit within that little wheelhouse there. It's sort of built in. And again, it depends what you mean by use on that, whether it's a teacher directing something versus a student creating it on their own. So the Khan example that you had said earlier, things like that. I think maybe a solution is if the board wanted to vote on this tonight, I think as Nathan suggested, I think there appears to be consensus on desire to ensure that we're considering age stuff, and the administration can take that into account in gathering this information and being very cognizant of that and reporting that back out to you guys. At least that gets it started, and then if there's a need for, assuming the policy is adopted, if there's a further desire for amendments, we can take it up later.
Okay.
Mrs. Hall? What would you like to see that would obtain a yes from you?
Oh, I would like to see it rewritten to be understandable.
So, yeah, I had a suggestion just along these lines. So I was going to ask you 3 questions on this. Is the policy is written, is it something that you believe you understand well enough that you can implement it at your level?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be, and probably you were already going to do this, would it be possible to create a teacher summary and a parent summary? I don't know, the teacher summary you're probably going to have in some form of AI, of the implementation. A parent summary, would you be comfortable making those 2 documents that basically pull out the pieces that they actually, because they don't need to worry about the technical part, about our technology people are looking at what will this expose student data. They need to report the use of the tool so that our technology department can look at it, and they need to be generally aware of that, but that's not their responsibility to find out if it does, a teacher or a parent. Would it be possible to create summaries for those particular stakeholders?
Yeah, and I think 2 potentially, and I don't know if it's 2 summaries or it's an administrative regulation that we create that says, here's what we're doing.
I think the separate summaries might be useful just because the stakeholders have very different interactions with the policy. I think parents interact with the policy in a very different way from teachers, and so by pulling out only the pieces that they need to be concerned about, that might make it easier to understand. I think part of the difficulty understanding is that this is directed in a way at so many different people. It is directed, parts of it are directed at parents, making sure that your student isn't using an AI in a way that's going to get them a punishment for plagiarism, would be a parent concern. But is it exposing student data? That's something a parent would be concerned about. But in terms of verifying whether it does or not, that's the technology.
As in teachers need to understand and implement, parents need to understand, right?
Yeah, and the things they need to understand are different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if that would be at all helpful for you. And
To see it.
you'd want to see it, yeah. Would you create
We,
those?
we could attempt to create those and get some feedback. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if that brings you to a yes, but I think I hope that the creation of those will help to address your concerns, whether you vote yes or no.
Well, and I think you're onto something there, Nathan, in that, okay, yes, we're gonna have this inventory or this list available for parents to go and see, but this summary might help them to understand what they're looking at. Because it is, very, ambiguous and complicated, difficult to wrap your head around. So I think it may give parents a greater likelihood to allow their student to opt into something like this, because we are going to have parental acceptance, or they have to accept that it's okay for their child. But if they don't understand it, there may be a sense of, yeah, I don't want my kid doing this, I don't understand it,
Well, and maybe there's we do during our back-to-school nights, presentations to the families that come out for those nights. Maybe this is some sort of a topic that we can broach with parents at that point to sort of help them be better informed. I know we've had mixed turnout for our other parent-focused evening events.
Well, and I mean, it is going to take, it's going to take time.
It is.
This is going to take time. This is not going to happen quickly.
The other thing that I'll kind of put it the opposite way, the only way that I would be comfortable voting no on this policy is something that I think can't happen because it would involve additions to the agenda, which is we would have to give directives because otherwise we're effectively, by telling Bob to do all these things, we're kind of setting policy by saying, come up with an inventory. Don't let students be using this without parental consent if they're under a certain age. Various things that are actually covered in this. If a student is caught using it, to replace their own work, then discipline them as if it's plagiarism. We'd be directing them to do all those things, and to make that direction binding and give him a basis for doing it, because he may not be comfortable enacting plagiarism offense without a policy saying that that's what the offense is, because the parent might challenge him. Unless we could give him several directives that this policy does direct, I'm very uncomfortable with where we are, because he would have to be doing them kind of unofficially, And so if there's anything this policy directs that is, directs as an official directive that is something we do not want, that would be a reason to hold back, especially if it was worse than the good things that it does direct. But apart from that, I'm very uncomfortable not having several of the directives of this policy go into effect, and I don't see anything in it that is, for me, a poison pill that we can't rectify, fairly. There may be problems with it, but there are things we can rectify, and there are things that could happen now. So there's nothing in it. I don't see it causing any problems, making anything worse than it is now. I see it addressing a number of issues, and then there are a number of areas where I do think we'll have to tighten it up as we go.
Ms. Hall, do you see something that makes it
I mean,
worse?
I don't understand why we have to have a policy to make an inventory list.
well,
I mean,
otherwise
we
he's
had
doing it
a-
unofficially.
We had a field trip inventory
He,
list.
I mean, he can do things like that administratively.
Right.
But there are a number of things here that we're effectively asking him to do, and some of them are, you know, I mean, coming up with the industry standard is maybe not something that came from the board. And so I think because several of these things are coming from the board, it's appropriate to put them in policy rather than just say, hey, why don't you do these things?
So it's like we're making a policy before we have a framework or research. That's the part that I'm uncomfortable with.
No, there is research and a framework that went into this policy, but there is more that needs to happen, which is why I think it's going to be amended.
I mean, I think the AI committee took this policy up 8, 9 months ago and tried to wordsmith it as it went along. I don't think that work is ever going to be done. I think there's, you know, your feedback as far as distilling this down into something that's a little bit more straightforward would be a great thing for our next meeting, which I'll send you an email and ask about when that's going to happen.
I also think there are important things in here that we need to make sure are being done, and I'm uncomfortable with the continued usage without it. I'll say it again, the one that when I was working with the AI committee, prioritized critical evaluation and understanding of the risks associated with generative AI's overusage. I mean, Bob just a little bit ago was saying our students need to learn to use this in order to be, you know, employable in the future, and that is likely true for many employments, maybe not all, but many. That said, I think it's very dangerous to not start with critical evaluation because AIs hallucinate. When I was using an AI to come up with problem sets for my kids with multiple choice answers, sometimes there were no correct answers given. So you need to be looking at those results critically. And I want a policy that says, look, and is that policy extremely clear in terms of what needs to be done? No, because it can't be. What critical evaluation, that's an entire class. And so that's a curriculum that's going to have to be developed. Now, it's a curriculum that will exist across many classes. I'd like to see a critical thinking class all on its own that would maybe include some of that. But whatever.
Some of it's judgment calls for sure, which is why it's open-ended, but a no to this policy, and I hate saying it this way because it is a false way of framing it, but it also is mostly true, if we can go in that direction. A no to the policy is a yes to, I'm cool with things being not age appropriate, and I'm cool with things not being educational, because that is in the policy.
I see it differently. I mean, why can't we just say, no, we're not going to do this until we have a policy? Like, don't we govern? Like, don't we say what we can and can't do?
It's being done now, and it's incorporated into tools that are currently in use.
Respectfully, I know this conversation isn't going to, you're not moving me. So like, if you want to vote, we can vote. We know where I'm going to go with it. I don't think it provides guardrails if you can't understand what it says.
Well, I understand that, and but you know, at least this policy is coming up again very soon.
I think it will continue
with more
to,
information.
over and over and over again.
Yeah, and probably
Yes,
multiple
well,
times.
So Dr. Bryson, before we move on, what is your perspective on the framework of the procedure that this policy requires from you?
The procedure for approval of a tool,
Yes, correct.
we created it. So, I mean, that's a part of this policy that we did create and we're comfortable with. And quite honestly, that's the most important piece to me. It covers your age, it covers your data, it covers all of that. That's the important piece to me. And we've already begun the process of moving forward with it, whether you approve the policy tonight. I don't feel like I'm being forced to do that. I think it's ethically correct. So we're doing it.
This is another thing, is we can't say we're not doing it until we have a policy, because we don't have a policy that says we're not doing it. So we can't, the board is not, like, I'm not comfortable saying that. I'm not comfortable saying, but also we would have to have an agenda item saying, we're not using AI. That could have been the policy, and then they try to figure out how to do that, and it would be a nightmare. But we can't do that because that's not a policy that's been proposed. And so right now, if we pass nothing, then the use of it can continue under the current lack
Call
of
for the
guidelines.
question. Mr. President, I call for the question.
All right, we have a move to call the question. I'll second that. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? All right, so we'll have a vote.
So I think this is me, right?
Yeah, you can call for a vote. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a second. We had a lot of discussion. Thank you for all of that. Any nays or abstentions? Yes. So hearing.
Do a roll call vote on that.
Yeah.
What?
Well, so you're voting no.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to vote no? I just wanted to make sure there's an opportunity. Okay, all right.
So this motion carries. All right. It won't be as long going on, I promise you. Well, it might be, maybe one little other piece. Okay. Item 10.02, policy revisions for consideration. This actually is what we were talking about, oh no, I went into the policies. This is what we were talking about, that we have policies that are up for September. So the information that we have tonight is what those policies would be. The first reading of these policies will be at the September 17th, 2025 board meeting. Review of these policies will take place at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting at 5:30 p.m. on September 15th, 2025. Item 10.03, agreement with the Communication Solutions Group to provide a training session. I make a motion to approve an agreement with the Communication Solutions Group at a cost of $1,000 plus mileage reimbursement at the IRS rate to provide a training session titled Strategic Communication, Improving Clarity and Preventing Message Missteps. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Item 10.04, memorandum of understanding with the Southern New York Educational Association concerning 2 supplemental positions. I make a motion to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Southern York Educational Association concerning 2 supplemental positions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? All right, motion carries. Item 10.05, Dr. Robert Bryson's attendance at the LIU 12 Superintendent Symposium and AASA National Conference on Education. I'd like to make a motion to approve Dr. Bryson to attend the LIU 12 Superintendent Symposium and AASA National Conference on Education as follows: September 24th through 26th, 2025 in Washington, D.C. at no cost to the district, and 2, February 12th to the 14th, 2026 in Nashville, not to exceed $2,800. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? All right, that motion carries. All right, item 10.06, Athletic Director. I make a motion to authorize the Superintendent, Dr. Robert Bryson, in consultation with the Board President and Chair of Personnel and Policy, to provisionally hire the Athletic Director prior to the September 17th, 2025 school board meeting. Any such hiring of these administrators shall be subject to a ratifying vote of approval by the school board at the next scheduled meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question about that one. Do we currently have an AD? Like, who's doing that work in that position?
Your high school principal and assistant principal are currently filling in for the past AD.
Okay.
Yep. So big thank you to Mr. Bonnets and Dr. Sterner. And our assistant AD, who I don't want to forget, who's Mr. Kerr.
Any other discussion? All right, any nays or abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Item 10.07, this is a discussion on student cell phone use.
So Mr. Wilson asked to have this item. on the
Yeah,
agenda, so
I
I'll let
did
him
ask
lead
to
off.
at least get this on here as a discussion. I know we've been talking a lot about AI, but I think we do need to at least maintain the conversation on cell phone usage in schools. As of this starting school year, the following states have banned cell phones from bell to bell: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New York, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. With California, Georgia, and Vermont, they are going to be joining the next school year. It is, and I don't know if this might be in your legislative report, I might be stealing something here, but Pennsylvania State Senate is supposed to introduce a bill this fall to ban cell phones in schools from bell to bell. PSBA, although disagrees with that state level ban, saying each district needs to decide for themselves how best to address this. I just wanted to have this conversation to see where we're at with this, because this banning cell phones from schools, bell to bell, we're getting close to 50% of the states already going down this road. And I don't want to, Harrisburg's having enough trouble passing a budget to address something like this, I think. So, it's kind of, it comes to us to at least make sure we have these conversations to make sure we're doing the right thing for our students.
I agree with you. I think it's already the case here for elementary school and middle school, right? So we're basically talking about the high school. And I think getting ahead of legislators, it would be a good idea to hear from staff, maybe send out a little something. How did things go last year? Rely on our administrators to, help us understand if students were able to, restrain themselves from using their cell phones when it was inappropriate and when they shouldn't be, or if the staff was really having a hard time managing that in the classroom. I think that would help us to be able to know if we need to do something additionally before we wait for legislators to do it for us.
One thing I think I spoke briefly with Dr. Reppert about, currently any sort of cell phone violations are not state reportable offenses.
So we wouldn't.
They typically fall under our student
Code of conduct.
I think one of the things that we're going to at least take a look at some point is to figure out if we can get a sense from that.
Yeah, actually, back in April, I did report, because it did come up about what our cell phone
Yes.
concerns were, and I reported those. So I did reach back out. I did check, since we're at the end of the year, taking a look at our cell phone incidents that have been reported in Sapphire discipline. So in Sapphire, we have 0 at elementary, okay, for the year. At the middle school, we finished the year with 133 total infractions. Now, I do want to, let me rephrase that, with 101. I do want to say that back in April, there were 59, then we went to 101. So as I spoke with the administration, according to the handbook, first offense is a warning. That's not something that goes into. Second offense is a parent contact and a teacher detention. So we have students that had their warning and then ended up having a second offense that ended up in a consequence. So then that ends up getting noted. At the high school in April, it was 114, finished the year at 133. So when you're looking at, the total amount of infractions, you got 181 days, middle school, you got 450 students, okay? And you had 101 infractions through the entire year. I don't know, Bob, you're the math person, you can kind of figure out what the percentages, but it's minimal when you're looking at the amount of where students are receiving consequences as a result. Now go to the high school, just under 1,000 students, you have 133 incidents that ended up being where students receive consequences. But it does show, that first offense is a warning, does not get documented as a disciplinary piece, but it is noted so that if a student has a second offense, that there would be a parent contact, teacher detention. Second or third would be an office referral with an additional consequence and so on. So, you know, when you're looking at the number of infractions, yes, there are issues because there are numbers. It's not at zero. But as Mr. Wilson and I have talked over the years, there's a lot of other code of conduct things that we're not at zero, plagiarism being one, driving without a permit, you know, a parking placard, another one. So we do have infractions that occur, but when we're looking at the specific number of incidents, they're small compared to the amount of times that the students are in, 7+ hours during the day, 181 days of school, you know, and then looking at the total number of incidents that were actually recorded in Sapphire as a result of infractions.
So the middle school one you said was
101 for the year.
101 for the year, but the first warning was not recorded?
First warning, it does get recorded
It does get
because that allows the administration to know if there's a second,
Okay.
that there is a,
So that
that's
100
part of
does
the number we're
include
seeing here.
both firsts and seconds?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Which by your other data, your end of year data, that's, you know, 1/8 of the student code of conduct numbers, so, I mean,
Well, this is district-wide, but this would include the middle school and the high school, which middle school and high school add up to 200 and some, right?
Yeah.
I think
well, this is actually pulled, this is separate from what you have in front of you, because I was asked to
Yeah,
pull
this-
specific regarding cell phones, so I compared it based on the April to the end of the year total that was provided to me from our end of the year report.
But you're saying the annual total is 200 and some across the middle and high school?
Yes.
And if that becomes part of the student code of conduct violations of 835 for the year,
That would be,
it'd be about a quarter of
about
them.
25%.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it would be helpful also to hear from our student rep in regards to this, because you were voted in, and not that I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you, do you think we should ban cell phones? Because I think everybody would be mad at you if you said yes. But what are your thoughts seriously about cell phones in the classroom? Do you think that it's something that is very hard to manage?
I think we need to be careful and define what we're speaking to a little bit, because
Okay,
when you say classrooms, they're not to be utilized in the classrooms right now.
right?
And so there are restrictions. But as Mr. Wilson indicated, banning bell to bell is something different. So I think we have to recognize that, which is the case at the middle school. So you're banning, so to speak, bell to bell, you have 101 incidents. We're not banning bell to bell, we're banning instructional time at the high school. And there's 130 incidents with twice the number of kids. Now, we can all perceive that differently, but for me, you're still getting 100 incidents and we're banning it already. We're not banning in another building, we have around 100 and some incidents. Banning it doesn't get rid of them. Pouching them up doesn't get rid of them. Pouching them up, you put them in metal detector.
Right.
They just carry a second cell phone. That's what's happening. Or they get their own demagnetizers and they open their pouch up. So think about what we're really saying is, if you ban it at the high school, which is really the only thing we have left, bell to bell, no cell phones. You're talking about cafeteria in between classes. That's what you're adding on to the no cell phone list, if you will. And I'm not sure, Mr. Wilson, because I did a little bit of research on it too, so I'm not sure, but you may be absolutely correct in what you read, that it's a bell-to-bell ban for 27 states. Because what I was seeing is very specific differences in restrictions, but not necessarily bell-to-bell. And I think we are restricting cell phone usage from an all-out, you're not gonna have them from bell to bell, to a high school situation where they are allowed to have them in certain places at certain times, and if not, then they get referred, and you go through the same process, right? So, I think we need just to understand the terminology, because the devil's in the detail, right? If the state says bell to bell, well, what does it mean for us? High school loses cell phone use through the day. Now, I'd throw out there to folks, does that mean adults as well? Because it's hard to model a ban on cell phones from bell to bell, and yet your staff is utilizing their cell phones.
I think you also need to find what bell to bell is, because a bell rings when the class starts and when it ends, bell rings the start day and end of the day.
I
So-
get it, but yeah, right. I mean, I think that conceptually, most of the time, they're thinking, I walk in the building.
Right.
Right, and yeah, from that perspective. So,
I had to look that up to see, by bell to bell, which one do they mean? It looks like that typically means
Yeah.
starting bell to end bell.
so I think we may be a little bit ahead of we're a little bit ahead of the game in that we placed restrictions K through 8 and some restrictions 9 through 12. And philosophically, it's different than the AI thing for sure, but these kids are walking out the door as 18-year-olds, and some of them in our high school are 18 and 19-year-olds. They're walking out the door, and potentially, they're not going to have any kind of restrictions going on. I mean, some do in college, and some jobs, you have to hand your cell phone in, I get it. But potentially, again, we're teaching them how to use them responsibly versus getting rid of them at an older age group. I'm just sharing where we are now, the philosophy where we are now, so that hopefully your terminology and your understanding is similar in that piece. But I'd have to look deeper at the number of states that have already gone that way, because I think many of them have taken different strategies at different age groups with the
Yeah,
restrictions.
I mean, last year Pennsylvania was doing the magnetized pouches, and you get $100,000 from the
It's a
state
waste of
to
money.
Right, there were grants.
implement that. And I think the board at that time said, that's a waste of money. That's, so.
Yeah.
I would, a couple of things to add to this. One, the main concern I had about, or I don't know if the main, a concern that I had about this policy from a perspective of some parents, and especially if their child has, a reason to need to contact them during the day, and there are all sorts of things that could be going on, is taking away the ability to contact a parent during the day. It's my understanding now that parent email addresses can be added to an approved list of emails that students can email. Is that a thing that can happen? I know that I think one of my children tried to email me at one point, and it got bounced back or something, or
That was
vice
the
versa.
question we
But-
had, can parents email their children's SYCSD?
Right now, I don't think it's anything out of the district, so we
It's
can.
nothing out of the domain.
Or wait, I guess it was that we could allocate email addresses to parents.
Which caused a problem,
Which-
because then they would be a part of our network,
Okay.
and then you'd have phishing problems and
Okay,
all
so
that.
that's, okay.
Yeah.
So neither of those,
So can we make it such that it can receive outside approved emails?
But then it's all,
Yeah.
we run into accessing Zooms and
yeah.
all of the things that
We don't
I
want.
think we had concerns about previously.
So if there was a solution to that, that would take away one concern of mine, and maybe it's a chat app that has a certain, that can send text messages to a pre-approved list of like 4 or 5 people, that have to be, parents, grandparents, the parents basically have to specify. That would take away one concern that I would have about it. In favor of it, now that some of the states have those bell-to-bell bans in place, we're starting to get some information back on how it's working. And a number of students have actually reported that they didn't like it in the beginning. Actually, they're happier at school with the ban in place. Now, I don't know if there are enough results to call that but, maybe it's still anecdotes, but that may turn into data. So I think that's a thing to watch, because being really present in what you're doing, when you're, if you're going to school and you're really present in what you're doing there, that you're there to learn, that you're there to attend each class and learn what you have for that class. And yeah, there's going to be some talking among students between, and at lunch there are going to be breaks. But by keeping it all students talking to each other, not contacting people outside or checking what's happening by keeping it all within the school environment, that helps to maintain that focus, I think. So I think there is a case for it on that basis. I'm open to that. line of
One
argument.
of the analogies I saw about it was, okay, well, when our athletes are out on the field playing a game or practicing, they don't have their cell phones with them. But when they're in the classroom, they have their cell phone with them. So we're saying, okay, we should really, really focus on the sport side of things, but not the academic side of things. There's a little bit of a disconnect there, just philosophically.
I feel like the main focus is already on education, and by putting these rules that I think are fair to have, like, no phones allowed, but not locking them up and restricting people in any way, I think that still places an emphasis on education, but you're still saying you have this access, but you don't need it. I feel like what people are going to be upset about if you do end up doing a bell-to-bell ban is taking something away, and people obviously don't like when that happens. So I feel like there would be a lot of discontent from students and parents alike if something like a bell-to-bell ban were to go into effect.
I see that.
One way to address that, because we already have it for a lot of our students, is to simply have it follow grade levels up. So you do it, now, I guess with high school, that can be difficult because I guess, ninth grade and 10th grade students can be in the same class, so that, I guess there's a challenge there.
All grades
I
can be in
think
the same class.
But one-
Yeah.
One thing we're not noticing, like I followed up on, I think it's West Virginia, I'm not sure, don't quote me, but I looked up the legislation because I was interested in what Dr. Bryson said. Is it bell to bell? Are these states handling it different ways? I want to say that it's West Virginia, but I was reading the legislation on one of them, and it did bring up something, as we're, as a school board evaluating, we asked Dr. Reppert to give us the incident rates, and so, yeah, that obviously tells us when somebody has their cell phone out and they're not supposed to. But there's more to consider, because we can't quantify distraction. So currently, you're not allowed to have your cell phone out when, in high
During
school.
class.
During class. But you can get the notification that somebody likes something on Facebook on your Apple Watch. You can't quantify the distraction. And so some of these legislations we're talking about, it wasn't just having their cell phone on them and having it be restrictions that way. It was the constant distractions throughout the day, notifications, things like that.
Yeah.
Which I do see that. And yeah, it would be a distraction. Going back a little bit to the AI, the point of school is to prep them for life, right? Prep these kids for life. And your cell phone is going to be with you. I never leave the house without it, ever. Wallet, keys, cell phone, right? So the point is to use it responsibly. And if we're banning bell to bell, which, to be honest, I'm not really for, in more of an effort to how do we get them to just be responsible. A warning tiered system, warning, hey, put it away. 2, okay, now you're going to bring it to the front of the class in a basket or whatever. 3, now we're talking to your parents. It's never getting past number 2. I know, going back to when I was that age, I wouldn't want to have my parent have to come in and get my phone out because then my phone's leaving at home. And I don't want that. So when you're teaching that level of responsibility and encouraging them to grow that within themselves, I think that's more advantageous than outright ban, you can't have it. in addition to that, Matt, you might have some insight on that, on this. Looking at a worst-case scenario situation, let's say we have to evacuate the building, okay? The community grapevine goes out, you're gonna have a bunch of parents calling a bunch of phones that aren't answering. You're gonna have a bunch of freaked out parents that are now showing up to what could just be a fire drill, okay? Or a evacuation of a building, something like that. Where it didn't need to happen if the child could just text back, it's fine, just fire drill. Or a relocation situation could happen, right? You could avoid a bunch of freaked out parents. Again, worst case scenario stuff, but if you make them put it in their locker and they don't have it on them, when you leave the building, it's with you. Does that make sense what I'm saying here? I don't think we want to go that extreme because we could avoid some issues if some end of line stuff were to happen.
I mean, yeah, and I can see that. I mean, the reason I want to at least have the conversation is that there are states that are already going this way, and more than likely it is going to reach Pennsylvania at some point.
I think, what if we wait and see? I hate to say that,
Oh,
we
yeah,
already
no,
have rules in place. Wait and see how these other states pan out. I hate to say, if there is a worst-case scenario and they dealt with this, what happened? What did these schools have to deal with? I don't want to see that happen, but what if? And then we're going to see if that was really a good option or not. And I mean, we have a rule in place right now. We're monitoring it. We're telling students, be responsible. We trust you with your phone, and, you know, that's the best we can do. We can't,
Because
we
you're
can't
gonna
take
have,
everything away.
you're gonna have,
No, I'm,
you're gonna
yeah,
have,
I mean, like, we're not.
guaranteed,
The,
but.
the reason I want to at least have this conversation is this is going to reach Pennsylvania at some point.
decision may be taken away from
Absolutely.
us.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
you know,
And
Yeah.
that very well.
it's either,
Legislature could make a decision.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah, and that's fine.
And then that's not our call.
I want to add one thing on the notion that we are, you know, of preparing our students for life, that, you know, they have it, but they have to be responsible with it. I do see that argument, and that actually fits with the idea that we're not allowing to have them in elementary school, because we don't make elementary school students make all the decisions about responsibility that we expect from high school students. That said, in preparing them for the real world, this is just anecdotal, but there's a college professor that I really, you know, a good friend of mine from James Madison, taught when I went there, and his penalty for having your phone out in class is a letter grade off of your grade for that class for the semester. No warnings. The penalty is severe, and that's what he has. So that is out there in the real world. When they go to college, they may have a professor who will take, it is very possible they would have a professor who would take a letter grade off of their grade for the semester, that sort of severe consequence. So we may need to consider that, okay, you get a warning, and then it gets taken away for the day, and then the third time we contact, that may be like, if we're talking about outright bans, maybe the penalty needs to be a little bit more severe. Maybe we need to jump one of those levels to let them know, hey, look, some people are not going to tolerate this if you have it out during class.
Well, they're gonna do what all adults do, is figure it out, you know, and once you get to that point, you're gonna have to evolve.
Yeah.
If I were to go from high school to college, and that's what the professor said, well, that's a little harsher than high school, I guess, so I guess we gotta adjust.
Yeah, but a lot of times preparing is a matter of there's a certain amount of gradualism to preparing, so that.
You don't want a
that is the
massive
thing that
learning
I think-
curve as compared to just a learning curve, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
If we have data, though, that's telling us that in an outright banned situation, 2 grade levels, 100 infractions, and then a not outright banned 4 grade levels, equivalent number of infractions, I feel like we would be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
I mean, it's a lot of our student code of conduct violations, it's a quarter of them.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
No, but
That's-
his point is, you have, I think, and you may already understand, so I don't want to, I think I did a really poor job, that's where I was going with it, Bill, previously, but you have 500 kids, 1,000 kids roughly, you've roughly got the same number of incidents, and this building has a ban.
Well, so part of what may be going on there is students may think, in the middle school, they may believe they can get away with it between classes, but every one of those that gets caught becomes an infraction. So you should expect higher infractions where the rules are more strict. If the students are, so to a point, I mean, sometimes having very strict rules that are very severely enforced.
Back to your college example, then.
Well, so there's the strictness of the rule, and then there's the severity of the enforcement. Those are two separate things. And a stricter rule that does not have severe enforcement, you'd actually expect to have a higher number of violations, because people in high school are doing things that would violate the rule if the rule were stricter.
So I wonder how many kids hit the parent level and stopped? Or how many kids redid it and redid it? Like
I don't
know you
have that
a-
specifically.
No, I didn't think you would, and I don't expect you to.
I do expect you to.
But
All
I'm
day,
just,
honey.
like, I mean, like, was it 50 kids that did it twice? And, like, this is,
You're gonna have kids that are good to it. It's gonna happen.
Right,
But
exactly.
as the progression step goes higher, it's gonna get less and less and less and less. Because kids don't want to deal with parents taking away their phones. I promise you.
I'm, like I said, I'm somewhat open-minded on the policy. I can see both sides. I will say, I do not consider a quarter of our student code of conduct violations to be a small issue when it comes to student code of conduct.
Even though the issue is a
that
small issue.
Well, if it's distracting, I mean, what are the other student code of conduct violations?
If it was if
know,
it was a
talking
quarter
in
more
class is also
fighting, we'd be having a
distracting.
different conversation. But it's
Yeah, I
pulling out
mean-
the stuff and I'm looking at it. It's not as big as a deal as a fighting issue would be.
Well, but those aren't, fighting would not be student code of conduct. Student code of conduct is the minor stuff that tends to create distraction in class. So it's talking in class, or, you know,
Dress code violations.
dress code violations. It's the things that create more minor issues than fighting. So it fits in that category, but it does make up a large percentage of the things in that category.
I mean, I'm not saying the 100's fine, I'm not saying it's okay, but I mean, I'm also, I don't know. I'd say wait for the state for a little bit, see how it goes.
Yeah, look.
Give it a year.
And also, you know, as we said, all these states are currently doing it for going into the school year. By November, we're going to start hearing
Some data.
we're going to start hearing some data as far as how it affects the students, the environment, the staff. So,
We would also have some opportunity, potentially, with Mr. Templeton to, you know, through surveys, focus groups, you know, hear some feedback from the teachers and about what effect they're seeing in the classroom. And I wouldn't be willing to consider doing anything without having an understanding of that.
It would be good to have the teacher's perspective on how big of a problem this is, because the number of violations, yes, it's a large percent of our violations, but only they can tell us how disruptive it is in class. They can tell us part of the story. The students can tell us the other part of the story, but they're not necessarily all going to. They're not going to tell us, oh, I was distracted because I was looking at my watch.
I was distracted because my parent texted me.
Right.
Like, I mean, how many parents are reaching out to their kid
Yeah.
going, what color do you want? I'm out shopping right now. Like, and the kid answers because it's their parent. Like, I mean, like you know, how many kids got in trouble for that?
I do think that there is at least a component to students in this culture with cell phones, and they're dealing with pressures that, you know, we didn't have to deal with when we were in school. So it would be interesting to know if in these states that are doing bell to bell, if there is some reprieve from that pressure. I don't know how you really, really quantify that data, but, you know, it would at least be interesting to understand it, because I do think that it can be, for some students, very brutal. The whole social aspect that comes with cell phones, or maybe the antisocial aspect that comes with cell phones. However, I think it would, the unintended consequences would be enormous. So therefore, it would take some pretty actionable data to convince me that it would be a good idea to do. Because I think the unintended consequences would be things that maybe the solution that, or what we're trying to solve, we may create a worse problem than anything we would ever be solving.
It's possible, yeah. I'll say, I'm glad we don't allow them out in class.
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of table stakes for this.
Yeah.
That they should not be out in class.
And I'm glad that we are already taking, you know, recording that data, and it's something we can see. You know, it's already, so it's not like this is something that's being ignored. It's not. You know, we are already paying attention to it. We're already recording it.
Any more discussion?
No.
All right. 10.08, other items of business. I have none, so I will turn it back to you, President Henkel.
Thank you. Next, we'll have item 11, buildings and grounds. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hall.
Thank you, President Henkel. Moving to 11.01, buildings and grounds report for July of 2025. Mr. Buffington?
Yeah, the report's there just for information. Certainly a busy summer with a lot of work to do, and heard comments about the grounds and the buildings. Certainly our staff has done a wonderful job preparing the buildings for school to start.
And I would imagine we've had some challenges with all of the weather through the past couple of months, and
Certainly,
get projects completed.
certainly a challenge for roofing projects. Do want to mention, because of the rain and things, the roofing project is behind schedule, but they have a plan to complete. They are going to move to second shift next week as school begins, and will be done within a few weeks.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 11.02. The water test report is there for our information. Moving on to 11.03. Advertise a request for qualifications for a guaranteed energy savings performance project. I would like to make a motion to advertise a request for qualifications for a guaranteed energy saving performance project. The project would be the Greatest Needs project approved in June of 2025. Boilers, rooftop equipment, and roof. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion. So is everybody comfortable with understanding what we are doing here? It's a different type of bidding process than would typically be that, I've talked to it with Susan and Randy in great detail, and I'm very comfortable with the process. I think it is a great opportunity to see how this works and go forward. And one really great thing that comes out of it is that there will be no change orders. It's not possible to have change orders. So, that does give you the potential that you might maybe have a slightly higher bid because of that. But as we all know, change orders can make that up and then some in a very, very, very quickly. So I think this is a good time to try this. It's something Susan had made mention, they had tried to look at it in the past, and projects really were too large to really accommodate it. But, you know, we are really focusing in on a lot of things here that have to do with energy savings, so it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and if I can, the one really big piece that we're looking for in it is it gives us the ability with the performance company to have the contractors look at the plans, and if they have more innovative solutions or ideas, then we can move on that as part of the process. With a bid, you put the plans out, that is what it is. You really can't change it. So that's one of the things we're really excited to kind of explore with this opportunity.
Which is, to me, that's a huge benefit because sometimes you end up doing something in a way that you end up having to change it later. And so the money you thought you saved going, you know, with the lowest bidder, you know, you end up spending a lot more because you have to tear into something because, oh, you know, this was done in a not optimal way because the engineer didn't get to go back and forth with the contractor. So yeah, I can see that as a huge benefit.
Any other discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 11.04, a motion to approve including select Shrewsbury skylights in the project approved in June of 2025, boiler, rooftop equipment, and roof as an alternate. Do I have a second?
Second.
So this is just as it says, the opportunity to address these skylights while we're on that roof doing the work, which I think we should, we'll see what the alternate comes in at, but that definitely should be very high in our consideration. We're up there on those roofs working. To have to go back onto them later is counterintuitive from my perspective, so.
Just like we were mentioning, I mean, this certainly gives us some opportunity to look at that in this process where it brings the designer and the contractors closer together for, alternatives that we can consider.
And we wanted to make sure we're clear, so we use the word select because there are skylights in the canopy. We're not doing the canopy at this time, so it is particular skylights, not all the skylights at
Right.
Shrewsbury.
So it's the skylights in the areas where we're working.
In the main roof of the building.
In the flat roof, yeah.
Well, I don't think this would necessarily impact my vote in any way on this matter because the skylights here in this are already there. Do we have any sense whether skylights have been a net positive? You know, I understand they save on lighting costs, although lighting has gotten a lot cheaper over the past couple decades, you know, with the move from incandescent to LEDs. They, I suppose, can help with heating. Well, they heat up in the summer. It can help with heating in the winter a little bit in that you get some thermal, you know, get some heat from the sun, but they leak. They're very prone to leaking. So do we know, you know, if we had to make a future decision about whether to even include a skylight, do we know if they're a net positive? There's also the aesthetic, but it has to be considered. But are they, if you just consider, aesthetics is hard to quantify, if you just consider like energy and the energy savings basically, are they a net positive?
Yeah, we could look into that. Certainly the ones we're talking about aren't adding any new ones. It may be modifying, certainly you have an opening through the roof and then there's a skylight. One of the things that we've experienced at Shrewsbury is that the sunlight is so direct, you know, and it does heat up the rooms, and particularly in summer or springtime when it's warm, you know, so we do battle the extra heat that.
Yeah, so there's an energy cost.
There's an energy cost there that, you know, does it need more tinting, you know, on the glass? You had mentioned leaks. They are susceptible to leaks, so looking at potentially, if you would change out that skylight, right now, a lot of them are pyramids, you know, it's potentially going with maybe a flat roof type, where it has kind of a clear story windows around, less chance of that direct light on or direct water on the glass. But back to the beauty of GESA, Guaranteed Energy Savings Act that we just talked through. We can look at these alternatives and come back with recommendations with costs associated with it.
Okay, so is there a possibility that in this case, that they might look at it and say, you know what, delete this skylight, let's just have roof here? Is that a possibility?
Certainly a possibility. Yeah, certainly with that, they would want to look at the lighting and things that, okay, if you do get rid of a skylight, do we need additional light inside? But yes, that is one of the
It would
possibilities.
almost
Okay.
surely require some interior changes as well,
Yeah.
Right.
if you were to do that.
Well, as long as we communicate to them that that is an option that we would consider and that we want to consider that in terms of energy savings, and you know, eliminating the potential for leaks, then I'll be a yes on this.
Or what you said, like the roof with windows on the side, that was kind
Yeah.
of nice too. Because I do like the light that comes into the elementary school, like it
Yeah.
is nice. It does. You don't feel like you're in like this,
Yeah, and it does give you a
Sorry.
volume, you know, as
Yes.
well. So there's alternatives, and we'll have those discussions of, let's look at different alternatives.
Okay. Sounds good.
One of the things, as we're on this, I did pass out at your seat, the design development cost summary. Don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but as you know, throughout the process, we do several estimates. Initially, we had the conceptual estimate back in February, and there was a low end and a high end. So I'd just kind of point to the first page at the bottom. You know, back in February, our estimate was between 5.9 and 7.26 million for the total estimate. Certainly, as they're putting the design together and putting numbers, costs to those different items, and the breakdown to those items on the back. But I just want to point out in the DD estimate, design development estimate, we're still within that range. We're at the high end, 7.24, but are within the range of that initial estimate. As we continue on, we'll have another estimate as we get closer to being able to select the project. So we would come back with cost things as we move forward. But good news with that, we're still within budget.
Is this estimate internally developed, or is it in consultation with?
Consultation with the architects and construction manager.
So we're in this motion for adding the skylight alternate. Do we have any other discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Motion is approved. So Randy, I don't want to cut off that level of discussion about these numbers. So if we want to discuss that a little more in depth before we get to the high school project financial report, I'm certainly willing to entertain that. Do we want to talk about these numbers?
The ones on the greatest needs?
So
Summary.
the original range that was given to us when we voted on this in a prior meeting, we are, the bold numbers or the DD estimate is still within that range, as long as we were all on the same page. Obviously, it's above the low end, but it's within the range of what our original estimates were. And this is not a direct representation of what it will look like when the bidding process is complete, because, you know, although that bidding process will be essentially third party with what we approved, it's still going to be a bidding process. You know, it's not necessarily going to be the numbers that are in front of us right now. It's just estimates, so we understand that.
And certainly the other thing, you know, to point out, we are gonna look into these skylights, certainly that would, be above this,
Right.
that estimate as well.
Right.
You know,
In the alternate,
yes.
yes, of course. But then, the alternate is exactly that. We can decide to do it or not to do it, pending upon, how it comes back. Okay, so 11.05 Susquehannock High School Project Financial Report.
Yeah, I don't need to spend a lot of time other than, similar numbers, on budget, working towards closing out the project, but just provided for your information, as we're closing different accounts and things, and gonna start closing out the contractors.
Where are you at on, as far as timeline?
Yeah, couple months yet, probably. I know over the summer, contractors made some good headway. Certainly, there may be some that, I'm sure there will be some contractors that their contract will be open longer. I would think there's going to be a couple here closed within the next month.
Are we getting the issues fixed, such as like the leaky windows and things of that nature?
Absolutely, yeah. And, I was going to say, James was there, but I was going to look to James to, obviously, he's living in the building, but very comfortable with the items, and particularly, the item you mentioned with the leaks. Yes, they were very responsible, and the general contractor in particular has been very good to work with. One of the things you will notice as you look at our grounds, there are some dead trees and shrubbery. They are committed to replacing that. However, right now is not the best time. As we get into fall, they'll be replacing that. So.
Thank you.
That's coming up.
Whenever I drive by, I wonder, when are they going to come back and fix those? I appreciate that.
Yep, and it's a warranty item, so, which is different than punch list, but they are committed to
Making it right.
replacing those.
So by close of calendar year, we're looking to close the project-ish?
Hopefully,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, typically, I think early on, I had noted that a project of this size can take 6 months to a year to close out. By the end of the year would be a year. So we'll keep pushing to get it closed out.
Thank you, Mr. Buffington. Moving on to 11.06, proposal to Heritage Lawn and Landscape Care of Thomasville, PA, for top dressing in the athletic fields. So I have a motion to award the following proposal to Heritage Lawn and Landscape Care of Thomasville, PA, for top dressing athletic fields. Portion of multi-purpose field, field number 6, for a cost of $271.70. The old baseball field, field number 3, for the cost of $2,717. The old softball field, field number 5, for a cost of $1,195.48. And the infield, field number 7, for the cost of $2,390.96. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
If I can, I just note, the board will recall that, we're continuing on the efforts of aerating, seeding, and top dressing our fields. One of the things, if you look back, you'll notice these costs are lower than the past time that we did these efforts, because we're actually going to do the aerating and the seeding in-house. When you look at the monthly report I provided, and you see the attachment that we bought for one of our pieces of equipment, that's going to allow us to avoid costs of contracted service. So we're excited about that.
Yes, I did see that.
But between these efforts and the wet spring, and early summer, we have seen great results, you know? So we can control the one effort, we just need Mother Nature to control the other to continue on to the good results.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving on to 11.07, proposal for Promax Fence Systems of Reading, PA. So I have a motion to approve the proposal from Promax Fence System of Reading, PA, Able Fence of Wrightsville, PA, in the amount of $19,960 for fencing around the equipment project using CoStar's price to add protection around the pump house tank. This project is part of the capital improvement plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 11.08, a proposal from Johnson Controls Fire Protection. I have a motion to approve the proposal from Johnson Controls Fire Protection LP of Cumberland, PA, in the amount of $2,225 for the installation of cell dialer for burglar system, the burglar system at Shrewsbury Elementary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 11.09, use of facilities, which there are none. And moving on to 11.10, other items of business, which I do not have any. I'll move it back to President Hinkle.
All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Hash will give us our Transportation, Health, and Safety Committee report.
Thank you, President Hinkle. 12.01, Student Transportation Report for June 2025. Just wanted to brief the board. Susan and the transportation team, they went through all the, and along with First Student, went through all the bus routes. They looked at all the stops. They looked at all the red light violations, the bus stop risks, and they adjusted the routes to ensure student safety as best we can. They have reorganized all the routes, and it was quite a heavy lift. Good news is, as we prepare for the 2025-2026 school year, the routes are ready, the bus drivers are ready, the buses are ready, the depot is ready. They did have a transition. Mr. Tristan, the location manager, he took a different position within First Student. They moved in Ms. Doreen Strayer as our new depot manager. From what I've heard, she is very eager and willing to work with the district and excited about the new opportunity with our district. So, moving on to 12.02, I would like to make a motion to approve the following items for the 2025-2026 school year, including summer programs of 2025. Number 1, bus drivers, and number 2, bus routes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? Nays or abstentions?
Just welcome Mrs. Strayer.
Welcome, Mr. Strayer. That motion passes. Moving to 12.03, fourth quarter and year-end discipline data from Dr. Reppert.
Thank you, Mr. Hash. For the board directors, you do have with you or in front of you a two-page document, well, one-page front back, year-end discipline, which includes market periods 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the state reportable incidents, and then on the back side is the year-end data. It says fourth market period, but it's actually the year-end data at the end of the fourth market period for last year for the 2023, 24, 24, 25 school year. A couple things to note is, as you take a look at the comparative data on the back sheet, which has the green column for the 24-25, you can see that the discipline infractions for state reportable has decreased, just over 100 incidents. Two items I do want to point out where there was an increased altercations, or actually number 17 for fighting. We did have more physical altercations with students. As you're looking at a comparison through the year, so you have a +5 compared to the 23-24 school year. And the other one that I just wanted to point out is possession, use, and sale of vaping. Previous year was 18. We had 21 incidents this past school year. I know we do have the vape detectors that are in place. I know between Sergeant Smuck, the administrations at the high school and the middle school have been really pleased with the ability that they're able to, get to the areas or the locations where those things are occurring. And then as they search and identify the students, being able to kind of go through the discipline and whether it's, citing, if it's for, first offense, second, with drug use, or if it's, tobacco use. So just wanted to kind of point those out. One item I did want to note, it was not on the comparative. I did do a quick run. The total number of state reportable incidents for this past school year was 917. Previous year, 23-24, I did actually just look that up because I thought Mr. Wilson was going to ask that, would be 1,048. So there's actually a decrease as you're looking at state reportable incidents from 2023-24 to this past school year.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Reppert. 1204, other items of business. I have none. Back to you, President Hinkle.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Alberman, do you have anything?
Well, I have no report, but if I can recall from last year, fall sports are starting up, and it's going to be a great season, is what he would always say. And I'm being told that Meet the Team Night is Tuesday, the 19th. Am I correct on that? Anybody?
I think so.
Well,
I know it's
I'm not sure.
sometime early next week.
it might be then.
Let me look.
Monday or
I put it in my work schedule, so I wouldn't
It's not
get
on the
scheduled.
calendar. I did look. for
Nope.
that. I was texting, reaching out to phone a friend, and they said the 19th. So hopefully it's the 19th. I might be telling false information, but that's all I have.
I think it is the 19th.
That what your calendar says?
Yes.
Good.
Don't quote us yet.
If it's not, it's your fault.
Direct any complaints to me. Mr.
Right.
All right.
I do have other
yeah.
items of business under 1302 for athletics, please. Do I wait for you to introduce
ahead.
that? Okay. So I'm sure you recall from our last meeting that event ticket prices went up for various adults and passes. So I would like to just do a thumb check with the board about making our students free going into athletic events using their own school ID pass as their ticket. Would that be something that,
So I know if you said
could do this.
if we give a discount to all of our own people, we probably get rocks thrown at our bus.
this isn't everybody, this is our students
well-
who are the #1 attendees at games. I mean, would you say, Mr. Ross?
I feel like that's probably true. I'm usually not able to go to most games, but the ones that I do go to, I see a majority of students.
Sure. And how often do you have cash on you?
I always carry cash on me,
You do?
Good man.
Aw.
but I know a lot of other people do not,
Yes.
so
So what does
That would be-
administration think about that idea? Dr.
Make it
Bryson?
give free?
Kids getting it in free, just the high school for Susquehanna, high school and kids, at the middle school, elementary.
I would say, where's the revenue that's currently supplemented by that, whatever
We
that
just
amount
raised,
is?
Right? We just raised.
Not
event
enough to cover
prices.
that.
but is that going to make up for?
No.
You said it was the biggest.
We
If
raised
students
to
are the
bring us
biggest
in line.
contributor to ticket. I mean, from a business standpoint.
All right, but since.
However, I just have to say,
So
I
we're gonna
remember-
charge the away students.
Double.
Yes,
Double.
because the pass for our,
Including the
the
players.
student IDs would be their tickets. But, you know, here's the thing, I feel like when our previous athletic director was here, he did say, you know, our bread is not buttered by what event tickets earn. And so I just want to throw that out there because it has been brought up on several occasions and it hasn't come to the board for consideration. So I just wonder, would that be something that maybe we could put on the next agenda and maybe we can get some support for it?
Okay, your ticket can be your admission, but then you got to pay to get it back.
No,
No?
this is free for high school students.
What if you forget your student ID?
Well, then you're out of luck. You gotta pay just like anybody else
Yeah.
coming to our district, I would think. So anyway, just
If
for
it's a
fun.
thumb check, I'd be a no on making changes to the athletic prices that we've already established for the year. So it could be something to consider for next, but that's just me.
No, I agree.
Right, but we were also talking about sponsorships possibly.
Right, but we're not,
So-
like, let's let that take, like, I'd like to see our fields improve too, you know, with that money of sponsorship too, not just, hey, our kids can get in free now because we got a sponsor. So I'd rather see the fields be, or something be fixed, or a pole vaulting mat, you know, or anything. I'd rather see that happen out of our sponsorship for now.
All right.
I haven't heard many people complain.
Nope.
Since we brought up athletic tickets though, I would like to see
Sorry,
us.
Mrs. Green.
No.
It's okay.
I would like this, and I know Mrs. Hall did not like the idea of the last part of this. I would like to see us accept credit card or electronic payments, and the fee goes to the person who uses it, just because of the.
Convenience.
We are
being
on
cashless.
that.
Okay.
Are you?
All right.
Really?
I'm not sure when we're going to bring it to you, but one thing, talking to Mr. Carrington, who sat on the interviews for the athletic director, they have done that previously, so we are excited to talk about that and move forward with that. So that is something, I'm not saying we're going to be able to do it for the football season this year. We'll see how fast we can ramp it up. Of course, we'll need board approval, but that is something we're definitely committed to doing.
That's awesome.
I would also, one recommendation I would make, and I'm not going to weigh in on whether it's free for students or not free for students, but one recommendation I would have from a financial standpoint and a budget standpoint is those kind of changes, I would recommend we do that through the budget process. The more we can make those kinds of changes as part of the budget process. So if there's things like that, think about those, and I think we start to bring those up at the November meeting when we talk about putting the budget together, because we're really putting the budget together based upon the framework of what we have. And right now, we have student ticket pricing. So if we're changing midstream, that makes it more difficult to really stick to what we said we were going to do. So not opposed to those kind of concepts, but that's why a couple years ago, the board brought up in June that we wanted to change the senior citizen tax rebate. Well, we already had budgeted an amount for that, so that's why we now bring it up in November. Like, if we want to change that, we need to do it then so that we budget it correctly. So that's just a recommendation I have from that standpoint.
Okay, that's all I had. I just wanted to throw it out there. See
But
where it
the-
lands. I think that balloon didn't go very far, but we'll see.
I'm glad to hear about the electronic payments, because I think that'll be a nice convenience, and it's also very important to me that the fee be paid by the person using that convenience, so that people who are paying cash can get the cash price and not have to subsidize or not have, that they don't have to subsidize the person who wants the convenience, the credit card. Taxpayers don't have to subsidize it. If you want that convenience, well, then you paid the fee, and that's fine.
That concludes my report again.
Mrs. Dahlgren, just to
Oh,
confirm,
no. It's fine.
Dr. Sterner just sent me a message that the meet the team night is next Tuesday, 7 p.m.
Thank you. Now it concludes my report
There
for
you
the third time.
Don't direct your anger
Are you
at us
sure?
anymore.
I don't know.
Nothing else?
Well, if you have anything, we're now at committee report other business. No? Okay. Second chance. All right, 15.01 Legislative Council. Mrs. Mary Lee Hall.
Thank you. So of course, you all know that the state budget is well past due from June 30th deadline, but there's been progress in the House and the Senate, positioning bills to pass the budget when an agreement is settled among legislators. So hopefully more to come in the next meeting, but maybe tomorrow would be better. All right, and passed from the House, Bill 1407 updates the grade span for Pennsylvania teacher certification to primary ages 3 through 11, secondary ages 11 to 21, and specialized areas pre-K through grade 12. And the legislation expands employment opportunities and increases teacher placement flexibility. And passed by the Senate, Bill 877 and 878 converts barber and cosmetology training through career and technical center pilot programs from a temporary opportunity to a permanent option for students. And one last bit of information that isn't necessarily legislative, but very helpful, is that if you may have missed the Shrewsbury YMCA Back to School event this past Sunday and in need of school supplies for children in kindergarten through 6th grade, there's one more opportunity available. And that is going to be at the Hanover Utz Factory Outlet, also sponsored in part by the Hanover branch of YMCA. And they're hosting their Back to School supply event Tuesday, August 19th from 5:30 to 7:30. So next Tuesday evening, kiddos will be able to pick up a backpack of goodies, and there will also be a certified technician available if you'd like to have your child's safety seat checked for younger children, ensuring their seat is installed correctly and peace of mind while parents drive. And that is it for me today.
Thank you. York County School Technology?
I don't have a lot to report. I think Bill went to the June meeting.
I actually was not able to go. I got COVID.
Oh, all right. So
like
I
literally
don't have
the
a lot
day
to
before.
report at all. So they have a start date of August 19th and 20th, and that's really all there was going on. There wasn't much going on in July. So that's all I have to report.
All right, thank you. LIU 12?
I have nothing to report.
All right. York Adams Tax Bureau?
Nothing to report.
Southern York County School District Foundation?
Meeting's next month, so I don't have any new information for you, but next month I will.
Other items of business? All right. The student activities report for June 2025 is attached for your information. Item 16.02, this is just for your information. There's a donation of 4 adult and 4 infant CPR mannequins, along with carrying bags to be used by the Susquehannock High School's EMT program from resident Mr. Jack Osman. So thank you, Mr. Jack Osman.
Thank you.
Resignations and retirements are attached for your information. And other items of business, I have none for this. So we'll move on to 17.01 is also there for your information. And 17.02, announcements by board president and superintendent. I will announce that we had an executive session immediately prior to this meeting to discuss a legal matter. And then a personnel and policy committee meeting will be held on Monday, September 15th, 2025 in this same building. And then the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Wednesday, September 17th, 2025, also in this building, beginning at 7 p.m. And if I didn't mention it, the Personnel and Policy meeting begins at 5:30 p.m. Over to you, Dr. Bryson.
Thank you, President Hinkle. As is evident by the wardrobe choices of several of those here this evening, we held our opening day program this morning, which proved both interesting, entertaining, and somewhat enjoyable for some of us. As I mentioned this morning to staff, the Cabinet Administrative team are committed to making sure the message of safe, supportive, and collaborative learning environments is shared, even so much as to far as to perform a 1970s disco routine in full period attire during the opening day celebration. It was inspiring that our Education Association took things a step further on behalf of our students in challenging us to attend tonight's board meeting as we appear before you this evening as a part of a promptu fundraising opportunity for Dollars for Scholars. So thank you to Mr. Newland, Ms. Collins, who jumped up and took advantage of our dress attire this morning to raise money for Dollars for Scholars. So Chris and Jen, thank you so much. Great idea. Our administrators and staff members have been busy over the summer, obviously, from what Dr. Repper had shared earlier, as well as just all the collective efforts of our custodial staff, maintenance staff, everyone that got our buildings ready and shined up. And if you see them right before the beginning of the year, it's pretty amazing the way they look when you go in. But also all of our staff who've been attending trainings throughout the summer, and our administrative team and coaching staff for putting those together and supporting them, including Dr. Hughes. And with that being said, I wish everybody the best of luck, both athletically, marching band, and throughout the school year as we get started here at the end of August. Living your dream.
I don't think the viewers at home got to see you with sunglasses.
Carry on.
There you go.
Mrs. Green?
I don't think they got to see the
All right.
dance.
Mrs. Green.
We had them on earlier.
Oh,
Did we hit the goal was $1,000? Did we hit it?
Didn't?
Or we don't have to.
All right, cut.
All right, well, we've got to finish the meeting. All right, 18 new business, anyone?
Well, there's just one question that Mr. Hash raised, but didn't get answered. Do we know?
Did we hit the number? Do we know?
We will.
The goal was $1,000.
We're getting there.
All
We
right,
did it in a day.
Very close.
We're getting close.
that's good.
But not close enough that we don't need your money. All right. With no other new business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
All right. Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. We are adjourned.